to all participants. Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, former Minister of Economy. Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Mahidin, Chief Statistician of Malaysia, DOSM. Puan Omna Srini Ong, MCSA Co-Chair. Ms. Lavanya Rama Iyer, MCSA Beyond GDP Lead for and also from WWF Malaysia. Distinguished speakers, and also then we have Dato Sri Sulaiman Mahbub from MIER. Welcome everyone. I know with the traffic and so on, some of us are going to be late because we had 130 participants actually registered. So some have already texted me saying that they are on their way. So anyway, we will start the ball rolling because we've got a very tight program, and we've got actually very distinguished speakers going to give us a lot of different perspective when we talk about beyond GDP. For MCSA, we have been the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance. We are a network of more than 200 organizations. And this is actually our third event on Beyond GDP. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Puan Srini Ong to give the welcoming remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I want to first introduce Dato Indrani Thuraisikal, who I'm very proud to co-chair the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance. He is always forgetful of self. So, Yang Berbahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, former Minister of Economy and Finance, and our lead actually in the working group for today's program. Yang Berbahagia Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Mahidin, Chief Statistician of Malaysia, who is a very strong collaborator and our partner on this, not only this initiative, but other initiatives. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dato Sri Dr. Sulaiman Mahbub, Executive Director of the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research. Thank you, Dato Sri, for being our partner. And Ms. Lavanya Rama Iyer, the lead and former co-chair of MCSA actually, and now she's currently the lead of Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance on Beyond GDP. Distinguished speakers, government officials, leaders from civil society, private sector and academia. Selamat pagi and salam sejahtera to all of you. Today, the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance, MCSA, in partnership with the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research and the Unku Aziz Center at the University of Malaya, proudly convenes the Measuring Progress, Creating Impact Beyond GDP Forum 2026. Now, this forum is, some of you may know, we have been following us since 2023, is part of a global movement to shift the development paradigm, one which will require reorienting our economies to center on people and planet. We are delighted that the space is growing, bringing together an expanding diversity and number of stakeholders to advance and shape the Beyond GDP agenda. That's how we would like to see it, the diversity of actors who are joining us and also working with government to shape what this will look like. So our session today is the third iteration of a national public discourse MCSA has been facilitating since 2023. This year we advanced the conversation of measuring true progress and prosperity by exploring practical pathways for a Malaysian Beyond GDP framework. So at this third forum, we are also excited to take our deliberations to the next level by convening a multi-stakeholder technical expert advisory group to guide this initiative forward. It is indeed encouraging, dear friends, that Malaysia is gaining traction in the Beyond GDP agenda, and you will hear about this progress, including the challenges and opportunities, from the stellar lineup of speakers from government to the UN, academia, and civil society. We would not be here today were it not for the support of the organizations and individuals who rose to the call and really gave their all, and we mean it, many sleepless nights, even for the speakers as they were preparing. Our thanks to Dato Sri Mustafa for leading the working group for this year's forum, Dato Sri Uzir and the DOSM team for your close collaboration, and Dato Sri Uzir beyond, not only now, over the years. University Malaya for hosting us at this Za'ba Memorial Library, which with special mention to Muhammad. Muhammad was that real solid voice you heard just now. Muhammad and his team for your gracious and thoughtful hospitality. The Malaysian Institute of Economic Research for your partnership. And the UN Resident Coordinator's Office for being that constant partner in our journey together. Janita is there, and Dr. Richard Marshall is here. Thank you very much. And also a special note of thanks to the WWF team. Thank you, Sophia, and your team for their outstanding technical and resource support. Really appreciate it. And finally, we are so grateful to have all of you, dear friends. So after this session, don't go away. We've got you on board. We've got your names and numbers, and Indrani will be calling you all for the next one. And we're so grateful to have all of you journey with us on this mighty endeavor. So we look forward to a rich conversation today, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Puan Omna, for the welcoming remarks. Now, before I call Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, or very warmly known as Topa, I would like to request all participants, if you see right in front of you the TV screen, there is a pre-forum survey. Can you please click on that and just fill up? It's just 3 questions, very simple, because we would like to just see the pulse of your thinking about some of the questions that we have put there, so that we can also share that with the panelists before the session starts. So can I please request all of y'all to quickly capture the QR code and fill up before I call upon Dato Sri Mustafa. Done? I'll count how many people here, and I want to see that same numbers here. Those people who know me, how I moderate, that's how I do things. I start calling you because I invited all 130 of yours, so I know who is who. Okay, without further ado, I would like to welcome Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, former Minister of Economy, to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Dato Indrani. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia, Madani. Very nervous this morning speaking before this very distinguished audience. Firstly, let me thank all of you for joining us on this beautiful morning. Lots of traffic jams along the way, some still on the way. Inshallah, to be here in a few minutes. Firstly, on behalf of UAC and Universiti Malaya, let me thank all of you for joining us. 130 altogether have registered themselves for this very important event. So a very warm thank you to all of you. Secondly, let me thank the keynote speaker and the speakers. I'll go through very quickly. Of course, we have Dato Sri Uzir, Ketua Perangkawan, Chief Statistician. Our other panelists are as follows. Professor Ulung, Dato Raja Rasia, Professor Tan Sri Noor Azlan, Ms. Lamnia Ramai Professor Rosita from Universiti Malaysia Sarawak, Emeritus Professor Jamal Usman, and of course one of the key members, Dr. Richard Marshall from the UN office here in Malaysia. So thank you, moderator. I'm going to be the moderator, the keynote speaker and speaker as well. There's so many distinguished people. I want to recognize Tan Sri Ghani Usman, former dean of this faculty in this university. I used to come here very often when I was dean many years ago, and he used to go up the hill to Intan. I was in Intan, to the south, Johor, of course. Also, Professor Suaiza, director of the Inklusif Center, the CEO of WWF. Thank you so much for joining us. And did I miss Tan Sri Slaman Hussein? Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Tan Sri Slaman, for joining us. This is a strategic partnership between three parties. Firstly, the leading people leading the team are those from the MCSA, Malaysian Civil Society Alliance, co-chaired by Mrs. Omnaz Trini Ong and Dato Ibrani, and led by Ms. Lavanya Ramaya. I've been asked to work with these three wonderful ladies. So I'm the only man in this, with Muhammad. Two men versus three ladies, wonderful ladies. I must thank them for being so passionate about this program, and it's wonderful working with you. So as I said, this is a strategic partnership between three parties. One is MCSA. They have been working closely with government since 2016, especially in advancing the SDG agenda for the country. Next will be MIR, of course, led by ED Tan Sri Slaman Mabo, who's been working very hard in bringing up MIR to be up there once again. And number three is UAC, led by Professor Tan Sri Suaiza. You know what MCSA has been doing all these years, as mentioned by Omna a few minutes ago. And MIR has been a lot of wonderful work in the last many years to keep track of what's going on in the Malaysian economy, to share with us issues and challenges. UAC, where you are this morning, next door to this building, they've been doing a lot of strategic partnerships. There was one in February, an interfaith dialogue. There was a partnership with YBhg, led by Dr. Denison Jayasuriya. In February, they had, I think in January it was, they had one Kota La'a, Universiti Malaya, where Professor Dato Dr. Hashim Yaakob, the former Vice Chancellor, Professor Zamri, the current Deputy Vice Chancellor, spoke all the wonderful things that the late Royal Professor Aziz did for the country. So UAC has been in this business of getting people together. There were two major ones this year. One, the Interfaith Dialogue in partnership with YBhg, and the other was this Telah Universiti Malaya and Universiti Malaya. We had two speakers representing one current university leadership, another the former Vice Chancellor. Last year, we partnered with KPT, Ministry of Higher Education, to organize a forum on poverty in ASEAN. Speakers came from Indonesia, from the Philippines, from Thailand, of course, our own country, Malaysia. Last year there were many other partnerships with Angkasa, with Yayasan Arba, and many others. So UAC has done a lot in promoting the legacy of Aziz, not only in poverty eradication, but also in many other areas, including education and socio-economic development. I would be remiss if I do not highlight the collaboration with the UN office here in Malaysia, as Brunei and Dr. Richard Marshall. UAC has been working very closely with UNDP and also the UN office in Malaysia to work on multi-dimensional poverty. Yeah? There was one big occasion last year. A lot of work was done last year to enhance understanding of this concept. And now we have DOSM publishing numbers on our scores in respect of the multi-poverty index in this country. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this forum once again, as we are running short of time. We'll try to catch up as much as we can. We're starting at 9:30 sharp with Dr. Sri Uzir. Once again, let me thank Dr. Sri Uzir for being so gracious. Not the first time she's come here to Universiti Malaya. She's been to many places. Very strong supporter of MCSA. Last year also in November, he spoke at this meeting organized by MCSA. Dr. Richard Marshall and others were there as well. So this is one of the many times that Jose has been with us. So thank you for your support. We know that the government has done a lot in promoting not only the SDG agenda, but also in broadening the scope of measuring development and progress in Malaysia. So once again, I'm pleased to see so many faces here, very excited to listen to Dr. Jose and of course to listen to the panel. We've tried to be as inclusive as possible, ensuring gender balance, racial balance. Just very interesting number. I've been informed that 70 people are not fasting this morning, which means there's a fair number of non-Muslims. In fact, non-Muslims are supposed to outnumber Muslims. We have 180 participants, 70 are not fasting, and they're going to be provided food. Don't worry about that. We have also made a special effort to invite our colleagues from Sabah and Sarawak, or at the time my colleague at Seri Panglima Hashim, the boss of Syria, who's here with his team. We invited a few participants from Sarawak as well. Are you here, Professor Rosita from UMass? Yes, sorry. Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm not been able to communicate with you, but Secretary has been talking to you. Thank you. So we're going to have a Sarawak Sabah perspective as well in this morning's discussion. That's it from me. Thank you. I'm coming back again for a second time to moderate the panel discussion. You're going to be hearing a bit more from me. Once again, a very big thank you to all of you for being here. And once again, I would thank 4 people in particular, the 3 ladies, Omna, Dato Indrani, and Lavanya, and Cik Mat from here at UAC for helping the team in making this event a success. And we all look forward to hearing from our panelists in the next few minutes. Terima kasih, have a good day, and enjoy yourself this whole morning. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, for your opening remarks. Without further ado, I would like to now invite Yang Bahagia Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzir Mahidin, Chief Statistician of DOSM Malaysia, to give his keynote address. Yang Bahagia.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia Madani. Thank you very much, Dato Indra. Now become very good, my good friend. Yang bagi Dato Sri Mustafa, terusnya Media Pembangunan Malaysia CSOSG Alliance, yang bagi Tan Sri Dato Sri Profesor, tuan-tuan dan puan, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Tadi Dato Sri Mustafa kata tak selesa duduk depan ni banyak tenet person kan. Saya lagi agak merah. tak pernah terbayang dalam kotak pemikiran saya satu hari nanti saya berada di tempat macam ini, bercakap di hadapan orang-orang yang begitu jauh berwibawa daripada saya. Cuma saya diberi amanah untuk menyampaikan sajalah. Tapi dari segi intelijen, intelektual, wisdom sangat di kalangan yang berkaitansi Datuk dan sebagainya, memang adalah. So topik yang diberi untuk saya hari ini, bagaimana kita nak melihat apa yang kita boleh sampaikan daripada perspektif statistik tentang beyond GDP, measuring progress, creating impact. So actually, I just came back from United Nations Statistician Commission 57. So di peringkat dunia, di Pertubuhan Bangsa Bersatu in United Nations, they are Statistician Commission, where from that meeting is done, carried out yearly. So all the measurement, all the manual be discussed during that time. So actually the topic we are discussing today is very relevant. So di peringkat dunia, actually kita bimbang sebenarnya how official statistic can go into crisis if you not manage appropriately. Because bila sekarang ni kan kita ada banyak sources yang lain daripada citizen centric dan sebagainya. So antara challenges yang dihadapi oleh statistical office ni di mana-mana negara, how the statistical office can really can perform very well and boleh pastikan requirement circumstances yang kita berada sekarang dipenuhi lah. So this saya jaga sharing yang kita akan sampaikan hari ini boleh banyak membantu lah. Cuma gist yang saya nak sampaikan sekarang is not about creating impact. The more important sekarang ni macam mana how fast to translate the data, the statistic into action. We have the issue now, the data is there, but we don't have the data charted. So no point we have the data but no action be taken. That among the issue that the role of civil society in many other countries is how play a vital role to participate actively. It's not at the national level but at the state level, district level, to bring all the data to action. So the role of DOSM to provide that statistic. So in many countries you have so powerful statistic being released and can be made use, and we have like a group of civil society that pick up the statistic and communicate and involve in many dimensions. I think our progress, our people well-being can be really looked after, not just leave it to the political or the government per se. So it is something that my feeling, if the DOSM in a sense can really bring the statistic to the people and people can really get benefit, that is something that been accomplished lah. Jadi kita tak nak lagi sebut saja DOSM hanya memperihalkan history, hanya memperihalkan data makro, GDP dan sebagainya. So now kita pergi kepada people oriented punya statistik lah, so behavior statistik. So untuk memudahkan apa yang ingin saya sampaikan, saya akan gunakan slide lah ya, boleh ya? So saya akan cover 5 perkara lah. Jadi sebenarnya agak heavy jugalah, tapi saya jaga it's not necessary for me to elaborate every slide, tetapi dia boleh dijadikan guide. Sebenarnya what kind of data available, how that data can connect with our punya follow up punya discussion lah. Oh sorry. So DOSM role in shaping Malaysia future. Besar dia punya tajuk tu. Tanpa kita sedari, kadang-kadang saya bagi tahu dekat para pelajar sekolah kan. Kadang-kadang pelajar sekolah saya tanya dia, dekat mana you bersalin, dekat mana you pergi sekolah kan. So adakah sekolah itu, adakah hospital itu tiba-tiba ada? Bila kita terangkan, because adanya statistik lah, kita boleh pastikan berapa fasiliti yang diperlukan untuk sekolah dan sebagainya. Tapi maksudnya statistik ni duduk di belakang lah. Kita tidak buat pembinaan, kita tak buat apa kan, tapi kita memberikan message, convey the message apa yang patut dilakukan lah. Cuma tidak ramai di kalangan kita yang boleh connect the dot tu, nak connect the statistik tu. Menjadi tanggungjawab kita lah. Saya kadang-kadang saya bercakap dengan Tasri kita punya academician kita ramai, tetapi academician kita kadang-kadang saya tengok dia tidak say something about, takkan nak komputasi Azlan je saya cakap. Maknanya so many profesor dalam bidang ekonomi, statistik dan sebagainya, dengan ada data tu actually so many things to craft to say in dia punya channel medsos. So DOSM cuba daripada 1949 dan sehingga sekarang dah 77 tahun kan. Jadi ini antara snapshot yang kita boleh nampak lah, dan Alhamdulillah the statistic been translated to action hingga menghasilkan serio ekonomi negara daripada ekonomi base kepada heavy industry punya ini, kepada manufacturing dan sebagainya lah. Jadi kita boleh nampak kat sini kita punya urbanization also daripada 28.7 kepada 76.2 sekarang lah 2025. So pada in 1947 we have only 4.7 million people. Now we have 34 million. So the nation demographic strength continue to grow. Prosperity has advanced in tandem. GDP per capita, which has been growing at only 1.8% in every decade. If we look at 1947 till 1970, the growth around 1.8. But has surged to an average annual growth of 7.2% for the period 1987 till 2022. That is the prosperity time. And under MK13 and Economy Madani, MK13 is continuation of the economy money policy which was first introduced during midterm review MK12, ensuring a consistent approach to economic development. The plan focus is anchored on three main thrusts: raising the ceiling, raising the floor, and strengthening the good governance. This is just a snapshot for everyone. Always people come first. We have 34.23 million, 70.96 male and 60.27 female. Reminding us that development should focus on people well-being, not just economic numbers. Jobs are about well-being, not just numbers. We have 60.9 million labor force and a low unemployment rate at 3.2%. But now in recent month we have only 2.9%. So the goal is not only job but quality employment that improve life. Investment must benefit society. Malaysia attracted RM 51.5 billion FDI and generated RM 33.9 billion in direct investment abroad. But what truly matters is how this investment enhance income, skill and opportunity for Malaysians. If we look at the trade success, we aim that trade success must support domestic strength. Export of RM 1.5 trillion and import RM 1.4 trillion demonstrate strong global link. However, trade must translate into better wage and stable price for household. GDP is only one part of the story. So the number of GDP currently RM 1.65 trillion with the GDP per capita RM 56.7k is look strong figures, but progress must also reflect quality of life, equality and access to services. Daily cost matter for more to people. Fuel prices raw 97 now at RM 3.47 and being subsidized at RM 2.05 and inflation rate of 1.8 for the overall year 2024 indicated that economic condition must support affordability and everyday comfort. The true progress is holistic, even with stable exchange rate, USD RM 4.19 and improving commodity price. Real development encompasses social well-being, environmental sustainability and human dignity, not just economic growth. Distinguished guests, the world is experiencing a universal slowdown in population growth among children and youth, while the share of those aged 65 and above is steadily rising. Malaysia reflects this demographic transition with the growth birth rate falling from 19.4 births per 1,000 population to only 12.2 births per 1,000 population in 2024, and the growth death rate dropping from 39.1 death per 1,000 population in 1921 to just 5.8 death per 1,000 in 2024. This continued decline in birth and death rate have extended life expectancy, and together they are contributing factor to our nation aging population. So based on our assumption, our peak, the population peak will be in 2059. So the maximum number of population we can go at the current circumstances around 42.38. That will be in year 2059. TFR declined to 1.4 in 2060. Average age of mother at first birth rising to 28 years. Median age at first married, male 28, female 27. Betul ke? Sekarang lebih kan? Dulu kita 23 dah. Kasih ya. Sekarang anak kita pun 30 pun nak kahwin tanya kita, abang dah ada cukup duit tak? Tapi yang paling kita tengok data Tansi ni Dato dia dah kahwin tapi untuk dapat anak pula ada masa pula, ada berapa tahun pula. Dulu immediately after married you get children kan. Sekarang mungkin 3-4 kita ada study. Mana married saja pun tak cukup. How they get from the married punya date dengan dapat anak. Itu pun juga isu sekarang. Dah makin prolong Tahu sebab apa kan? Sekarang sebab travel enjoy ada kan, delay kan. Kita dulu terus dapat anak kan. Okay. Ni snapshot lah. Saya ingat I will maybe skip dan kita boleh nampak di sini how kita punya income, expenditure, poverty, inequality in the broad measure is look okay, it's fine. We are have a good progress. So kita punya our absolute poverty getting better, and hardcore poverty also decline from 0.4 to 0.1, and Gini coefficient also saw slight improvement. Ini saya ambil si Azlan share dekat dia punya slide 68. So saya tak buat lagi sekali tak saya kan. So bila kita kata look at number beyond GDP, dalam GDP tu pun saja saya ingat kena tengok in detail lah. So amongnya yang Tansi Azlan pun highlighted, the share of the CE, composite gaji, lebih kurang 33%, jauh lebih rendah daripada negara-negara lain lah. Ini yang kita nampak. Sekarang ni kalau kita perasan, kita tak ada satu law antara gaji CEO dengan gaji ni. Kalau di negara maju, dia tak boleh lebih tinggi certain persen. Tapi sini gaji CEO, chairman, infinity. So dia punya, tadi macam mana dia bagi CE tu tinggi kan? So sharing sharing the value creation tu kepada pekerja kan. Tapi saya, kalau kita pernah duduk negara maju kan, dia orang sampai satu level, dia punya cara tax dia kata tak berbaloi nak kerja lebih kan. Sebab tax regime dia menyebabkan bayar tax lebih tinggi daripada earning income kan. Kat sini yang mungkin tak tahu, kita punya tax system pun mungkin ada influencer lah dia punya result ya. Nanti Tasir boleh explain lagi lah. Ini just daripada apa statistik yang kita lihat. So boleh kita lihat how the median wage Malaysia citizen in overall is increase from September, based on the later number 2025 RM2,064. Ini juga Tansi Seka highlightkan lah, berapa persen lagi rakyat Malaysia yang gajinya di bawah 1,000, bawah 2,000. This is the number yang maksud saya. If we want to look at a very detail, the data is there. How that translate the data to action. So this is something that is the role of the businesses, role of the government. How many of you promote PAKW, pelabaran asakir pawajah? dah download dah PAKW calculator. Actually that is very better to preserve majikan. How dare you bayar you punya pekerja, tetapi for design life punya calculation yang dosa keluar kawasan tu is sekian amount, tapi gaji you tak bagi setimpal. That can avoid, that akan atasi yang tadilah 35% komposisi pada pekerja tu. So dulu pekerja dia tidak ada alat. So bila I talk to at UN about how Malaysia bring the statistic to people, I mention about this one, calculator lah. Maknanya everyone have their own inflation. You have calculate your characteristic and where you live. You can measure reason and how much you need. So if the majikan transfer you daripada kawasan yang rendah kepada yang tinggi, you ada bargaining lah, tunjuk DOSM kata bos lebih extra 1,000 lah dia perlukan, then ada asas lah. So we as the civil society have to promote lah. PAKW siapa promote? Cuba angkat tangan dia kan? Tak share kan dekat you all punya media sosial ada? Kalau ada saya nak bagi hadiah. Tak ada. Saya cakap dekat banyak tempat pun kena rasa guilty tau. Because we have the alat, tetapi alat tu dia tersadai, dia tidak ketengahkan. Bila saya cakap dekat banyak tempat juga, this one very good, kenapa kami tak tahu? That the ground search yang saya dapat terima dekat on the ground lah. Maknanya mungkin baru ni I really grateful pada Miss Omar dan Indra, kita dah ada perjumpaan antara civil society dengan DOSM. So we have formalized, at least we have to meet every quarter lah, setiap 4 bulan untuk kita amplify dan juga have the very strong collaboration lah tentang whatever data yang kita ada. Very good lah. Saya inform that how civil society in Malaysia now actively with National Office to bring the statistics to people and toward what we call citizen-centric statistics. Thank you very much. Tapi bila kita bagi tahu about citizen-centric statistik, bila kita bagi tahu apa yang kita ada, the international, when they feel wow, there's not a lot of best practice being carried out in Malaysia actually. The good story lah. Ini satu lagi lah. So bila kita bincang tentang beyond GDP kan, so takkan kita nak biarkan senario ni sampai macam ni kan, berapa jurang gaji medium antara negeri dan sebagainya kan. So that's why apa kind of activity industri yang ada di negeri itu kan, tak ada satu perbincangan industri mana yang kita kena let go. Sebab kapitalis kadang-kadang just come here, just guna facility yang kita ada lah. Kita ada port yang baik dan gunakan kita untuk dapatkan pasaran yang kita ada good diplomasi dan sebagainya kan. Tapi adakah ni? Tapi we are working with certain agency now. Every firm level, Dato Seri Mustafa, actually when we want to give certain favorable treatment, we want to check about their import, their employment. So we have to look at the what economic effect. Kalau kita bagi taraf perintis sekian banyak, so actually so far berapa banyak pekerja yang dia gaji untuk negara kita, berapa SME yang input yang diguna. So it's really the moving forward, data driven kalau boleh is really have to be based on the firm level. It's no longer at the sectoral. Ataupun kalau kita tak buat, salah kita. Kan? Masa dia put up the proposal tu, approval tu, dia just cakap je kan. Tapi bila reality, is it happen? So with the power of statistics sekarang, the data integration, we can check one by one sebenarnya whether we have to boleh continue ke tak continue. How we benefit. That the powerful of the statistics kalau kita ada yang sedang diusahakan lah. This one just antara ethnic age group kan. So kita nampak lah kalau ada young age tu dia agak tinggi. Kalau dekat yang 45 at the 45 to 49 tinggi. Tapi saya dah kira sebenarnya kalau kita ambil tahun 70 dia punya inflasi rate every year sampai sekarang sebenarnya dah naik lebih kurang 5 kali ganda. So kalau 1,000 sepatutnya sekarang kena 5,000 lah, kalau tuan-tuan tengok dia punya data ya. Tapi kita masih lagi mengalami masalahnya. Ini adalah ni media money ikut degree yang saya nyatakan tadi. Tadi tuan-tuan boleh tengok. Ini yang Dato' Sri Musafa mention tadi lah. Kita telah pun pertama kali kita release. Sebelum ni kita tak release kita keluarkan dalam limited circulation, multi-dimensional poverty. So I think we can pick up this information, this statistic, and have a good discussion. How many minutes? 2 minit lagi. Ini kita punya ni lah pengiraan MPI kita. Kita education, health and living standard So MPI ini is a tool complement to our poverty line income lah yang kita selalu pakai PGK jauh sangat ini kita punya tahap deprive. So kita boleh tengok tentang year of school attendance, and also kita masukkan juga on the MPI ni on the communication facility. We know that give the people the economic opportunity not necessarily at the you have to stay the urban area kan. How about the accessible to internet dan sebagainya. So we put access to communication as the element in our comparison of MPI. This the numbers. I think I'm not going to elaborate. I think everyone can digest. So at the moment, our multi-dimensional poverty index 2024 is 0.0025. Really comparatively among the best lah in this region. So by state, so kita boleh nampak lah isu deprived di mana kita boleh tengok di daerah dan sebagainya. Kita boleh tengok. So MPI by state kita boleh tengok di sini. So pun kita dah ada negeri mana yang agak deprived dan sebagainya. Kita boleh nampak setengah-setengah negeri kita aware seperti Za'ba dan juga dengan Kelantan agak ni. So in comparison in the region ni kita bandingkan Thailand kita second lah after Thailand ni kita punya ranking. So I brief sikit tentang high level expert group yang kita ada di tingkat global, di tingkat international. So kita high level group ni was established in May 2025 lah. So focus on capturing multi-dimensional nature of sustainable development, recognize that GDP measure economy not overall well-being. So we seek a new compass for measuring progress. So the vision is the tagline, making invisible visible. So nanti boleh tanya how dosen go about it. 1 minit ada cukup 1 minit. Ini dia punya konseptual So saya tak boleh ada masa. So how we connect antara today, tomorrow, people, planet, link dengan human right, peace level. So is apa yang patut dilakukan. So if we talking about beyond GDP, so we can see how whatever yang kita dah measure tu, how we put and where the issue arise. Ini dia punya ni kan, formula kan. Dr. Masa boleh explain lah. You agree with this formula? Dia banyak ni kan, school of thought kan, boleh je. Adjustment punya paper, Profesor Ulong kan. So we hope in control kan. What we want to measure kan. Ini, so adakah kita boleh hypothetical example lah daripada GDP ni, how we make the adjusted in terms of well-being. Just that mean I just inform there are people are working on this measurement. So ini saya nak masuk maklumkan, dan simple aware dalam ekonomi kita ada framework kan, System National Account. So recently IMF World Bank come up with new manual, System National Account 2025 lah. So issue on how to measure the digital asset dan sebagainya kan. So inilah. So memang dia akan banyak yang dulu tak di-recognize sebagai asset, kita recognize sebagai asset dan sebagainya. So ini antara isu tentang unpaid household cash services kan. So ini antara perkara yang sedang di taken care by DOSM. Okay, Malaysia fokus demand on beyond GDP. Ini antara global conversation kita nampak Why do we need to go beyond GDP and why? Everyone know lah tentang ni. Okay. The key principle kita ada 5 measure current well-being, go beyond income, must look beyond average. So everyone matters. No one left behind. That's why reason ni pun kita ada publication khas untuk orang asli, golongan minoriti, dia punya profiling, kita dah ada. So the account for well-being is interconnected lah. The well-being framework, saya countries ni kita boleh tengok lah apa yang ada. Jadi mungkin di dengan tuan-tuan boleh inilah teliti kalau berminat. So ini yang kita punya measurement setakat ada beyond GDP ni, kita ada Human Development Index, Changing Wealth Nation, Multi-Decimal Vulnerability Index. Ni wise triangle. I think my earlier presentation I dah cover tentang konsep tentang wise ni, well-being, inclusion and sustainability. So this is the thing that yang DOSM telah keluar. Kita ada Malaysia Well-being Index, MyWI. Kita ada Malaysia Happiness Index. Tuan-tuan tahu kan negeri mana yang paling happy kan? Daerah mana yang paling happy? Negeri yang paling happy Terengganu lah, yang recently lah kan ada keluar GDP rendah pun tak apa, asalkan happy. Dan benar, nasi kopi keluarkan statistik, depend on everyone nak guna macam mana lah. So make the statistic available. So anyone who want to make the inferences up to you kan. Tapi we mention about the limitation metadata kan. Jadi we have by district lah. So keluar antara district yang paling happy. Abang tanya saya macam mana keluar jadi happy, kena tanya orang keluar lah. Nama saja, nama pun kualitatif. Mana bergantung bila you tanya yang kita amat terkejut. The first one kita keluar, lawan nombor 1. The second time lawan jatuh. That mean dia tidak semestinya ni, dia bergantung pada second answer dan sebagainya. Sampai kita test lagi sekali. Wah, lawan jatuh dapat result yang sama juga nanti. That's it lah. So one statistik ni, one you measure that dia adalah pegun dia punya data kan. That's it lah. So kita ada ni Malaysia Gender Index MPI, kita yang terbaru lah kita dah keluar. Kita juga working on the environment economic counting. So kita pun tanya dalam kita punya soalan banci, how many you spend dalam environment lah. Dalam baca ekonomi, when we collect the statistic about the economy, we also asking spending on the environment. Ni tentang water kita pun dah ada. So kita juga ada yang terbaru ni, kita ada culture creative satellite account, kita ada tourism satellite ICT regional, kita dah ada dengan Sabah dan juga Sarawak. This the framework. Kalau kita tengok, kalau gunakan data-data sekian dia ada, kita boleh nampak dia punya well-being, inclusion, sustain. Ini just jajaran yang simplify yang kita buat setakat ni lah. It's not fully exhaustive lah. Equitable equation sustainable. So kita tengok tentang isu on the disability. So kita ada isu sebenarnya percent disability dekat workforce itu pun kita kena tengok dan sebagainya. Ni skor, ni tadi yang kita punya 2024 meningkat daripada 6.48 7.60. Alhamdulillah kan. Okey lah. Mana juga kita punya happiness index. So negeri mana yang paling ni? Terengganu saya kata beritahu 2021 first time kita buat Labuan dia jatuh pada skor pada 7 Johor Negeri Sembilan, Melaka, Kelantan, Selangor mana Selangor? Selangor walaupun antara negeri yang maju 1/4 of the 1/4 GDP tapi tak semestinya happy kan? Setuju Kalau kau kata kalau Kelantan kita kena tengok apa kona'ah kita. Dia kata bila pergi tengok ziarah orang, dia tak rasa masak sakit pun. Okey sikit tapi bila jumpa kontraktor, oh masalah lah tu dapat projek kan. Itu dia punya perbezaan value Ini antara daerah so kita yang tinggi keluar Raub, Mesin ni. Yang terendah antaranya dia ada juga ni macam di Kudat, di Tenom Ini by daerah. So boleh tengok kat sini Okey, Terengganu banyak yang tinggi, Selangor pasal apa yang rendah ni? Kuala Selangor 69, Kuala Langat. Ini siapa nak ini boleh guna lah. Kau pakai guna boleh translate macam mana you nak go on the ni sistem demokrasi kena tengok kat sini. You kena bagi sedih kat orang, tengok kawasan ni tak happy dia, nak cuba nasib. So ambil data yang dosen keluar, check lah apa dia punya isu kan. Okay. Oh ini performance by state. Saya nak sampaikan ni satu tentang state. Boleh tengok dia punya ni grow dan juga ni. Satu yang saya nak cakap ni tentang kita dah ada GDP daerah ni. So dekat sini kita tahu lah dia punya structure ekonomi bagi setiap negeri. Ni daerah. So kita ada GDP daerah. So my conversion militansi Azlan VS ni kena banyak buat conversion not at the macro. Kena banyak conversion by daerah. So kalau di Thailand dia dah allocate setiap daerah tu mungkin 10 orang profesor ke. So 10 orang teknokrat ke kalau bantu kita semua cakap benda yang sama boleh. Cuba cakap masing-masing spesifik daerah ni, daerah B. So sedap kita didikkan kepada basic punya leader maknanya kita kena zoom lah. Kalau saya punya pandangan lah kena ada 164 daerah. So how kita nak bagi pandangan dan sebagainya. Ada sesi yang lebihnya. So kita dah tengok daerah. So okay. So yang beli okor PJ punya GDP campur 3 negeri pun tak sampai, tak boleh lawan PJ dia punya GDP Okay. Bintulu kita aware kan kawasan industri minyak. Okay. Tadi so kita boleh tengok lah. So ini semua the citizen centric data. So harap dengan kita punya sesi ni, so we can bring together how they translate the statistik to tindakan conversation yang lebih ni Yes, we have to continue because people at last kat sana, the people and yang tidak learned kan, they are at the mercy of kita, at the mercy of learned person. So kalau learned person pun sama macam dia orang asyik nak share nak makan kat mana, pakai baju apa dekat SP, tak ada beza lah. Padahal kita kena share benda yang ni lah supaya cerita isu daerah tu, daerah kawasan tu kan, baru nampak dia punya penggunaan statistik lebih menyeluruh Okay. Key challenges tentang data integration, improving subnational data, addressing emerging gap, ensure robust, enhancing stakeholder understanding. So about finish. So going forward, we need strategic national direction and also a realistic framework lah. So we embark with the recommendation of high level expert group. So we leverage on civil service regulation, enhance education system, capacity building, and one local and international cooperation. Okay. So we must integrate all the metrics of national policy making. Storytelling about statistik sikit lagi. Okay. So kita dah ada lain ekspektasi. Nasi dah tengok lain ekspektasi Nasi apa? Kalkulator. Boleh cakap dengan cucu kan saya? Oh, DOSM kata saya ada 1 tahun lagi. Rajin-rajin dah tengok untuk. Actually statistik pick up rhythm tau. Kita put algorithm. Kalau you stay in industry A, how your life expectancy do like? Kalau download lah prompt. Kita punya kalkulator dah ada. So saya cakap dekat overseas, wow. How we bring the conversation statistic to the people tau. Okay. So saya punya cadangan ataupun we can work together, how one day Malaysia are blessed with a good statistic. Kalau ada dashboard in every district kan kita ada 164, kita tekan saja kita tahu apa isu di kat sana. Kalau dapat CSR kita terus tahu kawasan mana kita patut pergi, jangan secara random. So syarikat-syarikat yang dapat pengacuan cukai sebagainya sepatutnya being guided by statistik. So dah ada dashboard. So how we are working on this, how dashboard we been ni boleh digunakan oleh umum dan dia boleh tahu kat mana yang sepatutnya saya bawa NGO ataupun volunteerism di kawasan mana. Jangan dia hanya buat aktiviti, dia buat suka-suka je ikut yang dia senang accept. Tapi ada yang kawasan yang lebih memerlukan, dia biarkan. Tak boleh. So that's how the power of statistics now, how to translate to action. Kami juga ada role, how that kita bring that simplify yang mudah diguna lah. So kalau misalnya Puan Omar nak pergi ni, nak check kawasan mana kan, pergi Kedah. So ada tengok daerah, you nak pilih dashboard daerah mana, tekan daerah tu, dia tengok profile, wah suku specific guided by the ni. Okay, thank you very much. This is my sharing for today. I may apologize kalau ada kekurangan. Ambil masa lebih sikit apa ya. Sekali dapat peluang. Okay, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dato Sri. As usual, you are very, what would I say, informative. And I see now more on consumer prices. So I know you're going to work with us, looking at consumers and citizens and community. Especially in a couple of months, I know you're going to join us on this, as well as on the Beyond GDP. So thank you very much. Can I get another round of applause? Can I also invite Dato Sri Mustafa to give a small token of appreciation to Dato Sri Uzir. This is with the compliments of WWF, so very environmental friendly. Before we go to the next presenter, can we just take a photograph? Can I ask the photographer to maybe come to the stage, and we'll take a photograph with everyone at the back here. Okay, thank you very much for that. And now without further ado, I will now invite Ms. Lavanya Rama Iyer to share the findings of MCSA's Beyond GDP initiatives. Just a short biography about Lavanya. She's a professionally qualified lawyer and a Chevening scholar. She's currently the Director of Policy and Climate Change for WWF Malaysia, and she represents WWF at the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance. She's also the lead for MCSA's program on Beyond GDP. So the floor is yours, Lavanya. If you want to go down, you can also go down if you feel more comfortable looking at, yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for all your active presence here today. And indeed, dear friends, I think I am qualified to be the most nervous because I am wedged between real heavyweights here. We heard the amazing, opening by Topa, and just now that fascinating presentation by Dato Seri. And of course, preceded by the really excellent remarks by our co-chairs, Omna and Indrani. And following that, we are going to have this really amazing panel session with very well-known personalities in this field. So I stand here before you really as pretty much a layperson, but a layperson who I think would represent the voices of many other lay people, the communities, the people, in trying to, make sense of what exactly we are pursuing when we look at progress. And this is essentially why the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance decided to take on this task of unwrapping what progress means, because it's also really the final target of the final goal of the SDGs. SDGs 17, goal 17, target 19 is all about this, moving beyond GDP. Now, before I start, I do also want to say DOSM is doing such an amazing job. And we are truly privileged to have such very close collaboration and such vibrant insights. Dato Seri and team have always been very encouraging. We started this journey in 2023 and they've been with us all along. And I must say, I must call out that I'm a proud Malaysian. I think we are all proud Malaysians to acknowledge that DOSM actually has been recognized globally as being #1 for open data sharing by the UN, right, in 2024. So, excellent, yeah. And so what we are trying to do as civil society and I guess non-state actors is really to support further this amazing achievements that Malaysia DOSM is doing at the global stage by bringing those grassroots voices that Dato Seri mentioned, and also sectoral voices. So I think you will find that what I'm going to present to you, the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance's journey in this from 2023 very much converges with what you just heard from Dato Seri. Yeah. So just a bit of context. Of course, this Beyond GDP thing I mentioned just now is part of the SDG framework itself, but it's also very much localized in our Madani economy framework, and also, of course, at global level, and you'll hear more about it from Dr. Richard. It's really part of the UN agenda as well. Now, in Malaysia, we also see it reflected in the SDG Roadmap 2 as the way forward, so it's been reflected there. It's part of the strategic trust by the government under Pusat SDG Negara and the Ministry of Economy. Beyond GDP is one of the strategic trusts to really accelerate the implementation of SDGs, and I think it's really embedded quite well in the 13th Malaysia Plan as well. So, just want to show you some pictures of the process we've been taking so far. These are photos from 2023, where we've had the first Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance workshop on Beyond GDP. We had a very excellent morning session with a lot of rich sharing by expert panelists. And after that, we rolled our sleeves up as CSOs and started trying to understand the issue, trying to grapple with whether GDP is alone is actually addressing all the problems that we as CSOs encounter, when we deal with communities, when we go down to the grassroots level. So just again, a lot of workshopping there, as you can see, with a lot of active participation, rich discussions. which then became synthesized into the findings I'll share shortly. But essentially, when we broke out into breakout groups, what we were trying to synthesize is really what are the problems arising from the use of GDP as a measure of progress and the drivers of why we are doing so, right? I'm sure you all know GDP wasn't designed to measure progress, but it is kind of being used as a proxy measure. What an ideal of a Malaysia beyond GDP would look like and the key enablers to get there. The key stakeholders involved or impacted by the current situation and those who should be involved in the transition from the present to the ideal, so also stakeholder mapping, and also key actions along with timelines to transition to a beyond GDP Malaysia. This is what the task we set ourselves in the 2023 workshop. And here I'll just show you an overview. We were actually 7 different groups divided into, environment, economy, education, also a special focus on indigenous peoples, gender. But this is a synthesis of the problems that I think we collectively encountered when we just use GDP as the really proxy measure of progress. So, on the left here, you see the social problems arising. I won't read all of them, but you can see that, it's unequal access to healthcare, unequal wealth distribution, etc., right? A whole lot of things that I can't also read it very clearly from here. And then on the right, you have the environmental problems. And these problems also relate to social well-being, right? So we just clustered them. You may be able to see more detail in the actual report eventually. But what is really driving these, right? So it's these 2 prioritizations. We found that prioritization of profit over welfare, or rather we feel that profit actually generates welfare, and that we question. And then prioritization of short-term results over long-term sustainability plans. And overarching all of this is budget tracking, budget spending tracked, but no comprehensive impact tracking, right? So we track how we are spending, but what is the impact that's arising? We don't think we are seeing the correlation very clearly. So that's the narrative, the stories that we need to build, as Dato Uzir had pointed out just now. So what's the ideal? We sort of said, okay, what do we want to head towards? It's just about well-being. So we want to be a highly productive society, right? So as I said, we built these as trees, if you'd like. So we want to look at ourselves as a highly productive society, not just about how much we as a society produce materialistically, right? So in that context, we have the social well-being and the environmental well-being. So the social well-being, you have healthy quality of life, high societal resilience, and then on the other side you also have the environment health. And these things would be measured by equal accessibility to work opportunities with equitable pay, work-life balance, for resilience, equitable access to basic necessities and services, equal educational opportunity, and for the environment, ambient air quality index, or things like that, or water quality. I think we have water accounts as well now. And resource management for more equitable distribution of wealth, right? And how do you nurture this? So this is what we felt we need to do to nurture this, to drive all this. So for example, with healthcare, we need to prioritize well-being, focusing on preventive care, food security, and health literacy. For education, have open access educational resources, collaborative research, dissemination of knowledge for the betterment of society, similar to what Dato Sri mentioned just now. Diverse programs for diverse talents and skills for a future-ready workforce. We know, things are rapidly changing, especially with the joys and maybe the anxieties of AI, for example. And also to incorporate environmental data into well-being indices, a holistic environmental education to shift relationships between man and environment. So right now we are working like we are disconnected, but actually we are part of nature, not apart from nature. And free prior informed consent engagement with IPs for meaningful and effective engagement. Yeah? So these are all the things that would nurture this flourishing dream tree, as we call it, to move into a highly productive society, but that is not measuring itself according to material wealth alone. So these are many enablers. I won't bore you with the details, and also because of time, but essentially today's forum is to be focusing very much on the data aspect, the technical data aspect. So I've put that in green. So looking at better data availability, collection and disaggregation to aid the understanding of various drivers of well-being, and also to help with incorporating different aspects of capital, such as natural, social and human capitals. So economic development integrates environmental health, social cohesion and human well-being. Of course, all these other things also need to be addressed, mainstreaming the beyond GDP, to shift our cultural focus towards other values for society to embrace, governance issues, literacy and education of communities, and also something that maybe we often ignore, but really embedding or adopting indigenous knowledge and traditional practices, which actually have a lot to offer in terms of sustainable and community-centered approaches to resource management. So overall, we have this kind of recommended broad framework. It is at 30,000 feet, and of course we need to bring it down. But broadly, we need to embed these values in moving forward, right? Coexistence with nature, community well-being, inclusivity, justice, intergenerational justice. So these are the principles that should run through when we talk about developing beyond GDP matrix. We should encompass lived realities using many dimensions. So the economic, social, environmental, cultural, all should be reflected. And everyone should have a voice in this, right? Multi-stakeholders, communities have a voice, civil society and academia, corporate sector, government. Everyone should come together. That's how we see this developing as a really robust framework for Malaysia. So we have, through these processes, we also had this workshop, a second workshop in November last year, 2025. So these are some of the things that we have come up with. Again, I will leave you to look at it with the, when you get the slides later. But it's just, we have come up with some steps, and some of it is already occurring now. Our co-chairs, Omna and Indrani, have already established a great working relationship, as Dato mentioned, on citizen-generated data. Yeah, we signed the MOU, in fact. Yeah, thank you so much, Dato and your team. So we have actually established this working relationship at quarterly meetings that Dato mentioned, and to support, CSOs in generating citizen-generated data. The DOSM is kindly running, several capacity building sessions. We need to do public communications, and we are actually ultimately looking to see, and this is one of the conversations, and we hope we can have today, and to get all your wisdom, whether it would be useful to develop, go one step further in this discussion and even try and see whether a weighted composite indicator might be something we can aspire towards. So in the long term, of course, we want to institutionalize community data mechanisms, even ministry KPIs being aligned to beyond GDP, and measures, establishing a GDP, beyond GDP dashboard, of course, and ultimately, if a composite indicator is found to be helpful, to pilot it and see how useful it is and work on that. And of course, embed and institutionalize participatory processes. Now, before I end, I'd just like to record our deep appreciation as the Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance. All these people here who have been so kindly sharing, generously sharing their wealth of experience, expertise and knowledge in our journeys. So these are all the various speakers in the 2023 workshop, the 2025 workshop, and you'll see DOSM has been with us all along, and Popa, thank you so much, for with your guidance as well. We are here today, really appreciate all of this. And every single person you see, those names here, have really contributed to how we have, to where we are so far now, and we really look forward to enriching further this journey with all of you here today. So these are some photos from the 2025 last year November workshop. We had also excellent participation and excellent discussions. We did the morning session with the great sharing, and then in the afternoon we went on to do workshopping again. Yeah. So I think with that, this ends my slide. But if we do have time, if we have 2 minutes, I would love to share a highlight video. Oh, we do. Excellent. Could we have the highlight video, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lavanya, for the sharing about MCSA's work on Beyond GDP. Before we go to the panel discussion, we'll take a 5 minutes, and I mean 5 minutes, a 5 minutes toilet break. There's a little bit of tea and coffee over there. For those who are not fasting, you can quickly take a quick break, and then we're going to start in 5 minutes. If not, I'll start ringing the ice cream bell. Thank you very much. So we are now going to start the panel discussion, moving from what to measure to how to measure. Before we start, I would like to share the pre-survey results. Can I get the pre-survey results? So please look at what you all have shared. For those of you all who actually filled in the survey results, if you look at the first one, the first question was, which of the following best describes what progress means to you? And 67.7% said that it's a balanced combination of economic prosperity, social well-being, and environmental sustainability. And 17.7 say that improvements in people's well-being, health, and quality of life. The next question, the second question, second one, the direction of progress measurement. Should national and sectoral progress move beyond GDP? And 64.5 say yes, GDP alone is no longer sufficient. The next one. Okay, if progress should go beyond GDP, what has been the main barrier to transition? 16%, 16.1 say lack of political will, no widely accepted methodology, institutional push for economic growth, and 14.5 also say lack of political will, data gaps and measurement challenges, difficulty integrating into policy decisions. Next, please. Okay, policy relevance, where would well-being metrics be most useful? 20.6% say all of the above, so everything from national development planning, budget and fiscal policy, sectoral policy, regional, local government planning, corporate and private sector reporting, as well as complementary reporting. Next, please. And the last one I think would be much more important. If a more holistic composite indicator could be developed by adopting a weighted approach, which dimensions should have the largest weightage? In the descending order, again, of course, income comes as number one, and then the second one is subjective, third one health and life expectancy, followed by education, environment, job quality, and GDP is number 7. Yes, so I think with, from this is what we have seen from the participants' pulse. So now we will hear the panel discussion, our panelists. What will they say about some of the findings here and maybe comment? So without further ado, I would firstly want to invite Professor Ulung Dato Dr. Raja Rasaya, who is the Executive Director of Asia-Europe Institute of Universiti Malaya. Just give me a moment. Just a little bit about Professor Ulung. Professor Ulung Dato Raja Rasaya, as I said, he's the Executive Director of the Asia-Europe Institute of Universiti Malaya. He obtained his PhD from Cambridge University in 1992. He was awarded the Robert McNamara Award by the World Bank in 1993. The Celso Furtado Prize in 2015 for advancing the frontiers of social science, economics, taught by the World Academy of Sciences, Distinguished Professorship, position in economics in 2018 by the Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia, and the Merdeka Prize by the Merdeka Prize Committee in 2018. He has published extensively on industrial policy, innovations, and institutions, and he just shared with me that there are already a lot of his publications. There's one on sustainable agriculture and food security in Southeast Asia that was published in last year, and a new book that's going to be coming out this June on sustainable industrial upgrading and climate resilience in Southeast Asia. The second speaker that I would like to invite would be Dr. Richard Marshall, who is the Senior Economist of the UNRCO, United Nations in Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, and Darussalam. The third speaker that I would like to invite is Ms. Lavanya Amayer from MCSA. I won't read out your CV again since I already introduced you. The fourth speaker is Tan Sri Dr. Noor Azlan Ghazali. Tan Sri is a professor of economics at the UKM Graduate School of Business. He is also the director of the Malaysian Institute of Inclusive Development and Advancement, which is called MINDA, of Universiti Kebangsaan, Malaysia. He was a member of the Economic Action Council, EAC, and served as the executive director of the Secretariat from 2020 till 2022. He was also the vice chair of the vice chancellor of the UKM from 2014 to 2018. Next we have on the list is Dr. Rosita Hamdan. Associate Professor Dr. Rosita Hamdan serves as a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Economics and Business at the Universiti Malaysia Sarawak, UNIMAS. She obtained a PhD in Environmental Economics, and her research focus includes environmental and climate change economics, agricultural economics, and development economics. And last but not the least, I would like to invite Emeritus Professor Dr. Jamal Othman. Dr. Jamal Othman is Emeritus Professor of Resource and Environmental Economics at the Center for Sustainable and Inclusive Development, UKM. He obtained his PhD from the Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics, College of Agriculture and Environmental Science of the University of Georgia, Athens in 1994. His research interest has been mainly in the area of economic sustainability and economic integration. He is currently the chairman for Economic and Social Development Cluster of the Academy of Professors, Malaysia, APM. And of course, the last but not the least, we have our moderator, our esteemed moderator, Tok Pang, as he's fondly known. And he will, I will now leave it to Tok Pang to moderate this session.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Madani. Once again, we have a big panel of big names, very distinguished people. So welcome to this very interesting discussion. A small correction before I start the session. I shared with you I've been working with three wonderful ladies, which is Indrani, Lavanya, and Omna. There's another lady I forgot to mention, is Professor Seri, Dr. Suhaiza. Thank you, and a team from UAC. So the four ladies actually been working with in the last few days. Anyway, it all almost from two very distinguished people. I mean, from one from Uzir, sharing the numbers what DOSM has been doing these years, adding to the rich body of statistics we've been producing. Not only the numbers, GDP, conventional national accounts, but also many other indicators of well-being, prosperity, sustainability. You've also heard from Lavanya, the journey we've taken since 2024. It's been 2 years. Okay, let me begin by sharing a few introductory remarks. We have on the panel 6 distinguished people, and we have Tan Sri Sulaiman joining us later in the day. He'll be doing the closing remarks. So they're looking at this subject from at least 3 perspectives. One, the global, that will be probably coming from Dr. Richard, and also perhaps probably Professor Ulong, and then national will be Prof. Azlan and Prof. Jamal perhaps, and the local probably Prof. Rosita. So we have global, national, and local. So that's one perspective. I'm sure you're going to be enriched after having listened to them. Number 2, we have a good number of participants, 130 registered people coming from government, a few from DOSM, a few from the Economic Ministry, a few from the Economic Ministry, from Bank Negara. We also have private sector, Chamber of Commerce. We also have CSOs, of course, YBhg, BGM, we have universities, UKM. So a very wide range of people. I'm sure we're going to get a productive discussion later on. The purpose today is to enhance our understanding of your GDP. But a lot this morning. Many of you are experts, yeah? Secondly, of course, to communicate. But more importantly, is to see how some of these concepts can be embedded, incorporated in government planning. I think that's the next step, right? So we know what beyond GDP is, we know what needs to be done, but more challenging in how do we get all these ideas, concepts embedded, incorporated, and aligned with the government policies. I know that the 12 plan, 30 plan, SDGs have been embedded in them, but perhaps the issue of communication, the perception is all GDP, national accounts, macro data, inflation, unemployment, nothing much about environment. But in reality, of course, a lot has been done, DOSM, the 12 and 13 plans and others. But I think the issue of the perception is the government is not doing enough to embed all these good things you've been doing in the budget, for example, in all the various plans we've been launching all this. So anyway, I do not want to go into details. The meat is coming from our experts. Yeah? I'm here just to moderate. Thank you, Indrani, for making those introductions. You have saved my time. Yeah? I mean, these personalities are all known to us, no strangers to us, big names, as I said. So I'm going to have a difficult time. The most difficult thing to do is to manage. Time management is the most difficult. We have a panel of 6 distinguished people. You have 7 minutes only, maximum, and 3 slides, and probably 3 or 4 points or sentences. But anyway, I'm not going to be a timekeeper. Where's the lady? Oh, you are going to. The lady for the chief, because in Rani, you need to shout when time's up. That's your job. I'm not good at that. You're good at shouting. Okay, so it's 7 minutes. That's the rule that we have. And then we get all the presentations. We have Q&A. Yeah, that's coming from you, from government, from private sector, universities, think tanks, CSOs. And then after that, of course, if we have time, I'll have some interaction with them or between them. So this is the process or the flow. Firstly, they will each speak for 7 minutes, and then after they have spoken, all of them, there will be depending how much time we have, there will be interaction among them or between me and them. If there's no time, we go straight to passing the part to the floor. Okay, so that's the flow. Presentation 7 minutes maximum. If there's time, there will be some interaction me and them or between themselves. If there's no time, we go straight to you. You are very important. Yeah? I don't want you to come here all the way, traffic jams, no parking at all, not having no opportunity to speak at all. We're going to make sure they have the time to speak up. Okay, I'm sure you got a lot of burning questions. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you don't mind there is this program. This does not reflect seniority or knowledge or expertise. This is, I think there's a lottery draw. Anyway, we begin with Dr. Richard Marshall doing sharing the global perspective, what's been done at the UN level. Over to you, Richard.
Good morning.
Microphones are a problem throughout the world, not just Malaysia. But more in Malaysia.
Oh my God, sorry, too loud.
We need UN to help you.
So what's best, to stand up or?
Yeah, but
just so I can see the slide, actually. Yeah. Okay, forget that. Don't need. Next one. Yeah, it doesn't seem to respond. Maybe it's. Great. Yeah, so I've got 7 slides, I'm sorry, but I will talk very fast, I promise. And my role, I think I've been told, is just to set the scene, to talk about the international processes. And you could talk for a long time about what's going on beyond GDP globally. But I just wanted to focus in on 2 processes. And they're distinct, but they're also linked in some sense. And I want to reference the work of the high-level expert group on beyond GDP. This is the global group that's been set up by the Secretary General following on from the Pact for the Future, that is seeking to develop new frameworks, new approaches to the measurement of welfare and well-being beyond GDP. And then I also want to talk about the system of national accounts 2025. Dr. Uzir will know all about this. This is real statistical stuff. But this is essentially an accounting standard, very different from the conceptual work that the group's doing. It's the nitty-gritty of how countries calculate their national accounts. So that's a broad set of accounts, both balance sheet style accounts, wealth accounts, and flow accounts. You know, the kind of, in a way, it's like if you think of a company, it's like doing the profit and loss and the balance sheet for the country as a whole. And the SNA specifies how institutions, how statistical institutions nationally do this and how global organizations do this. And crucially, it includes the calculation of GDP and GDP-like metrics. Now, I want to underline these are very distinct. Neither has authority over each other, but nevertheless, they are kind of linked in this process to arriving at new measures beyond GDP. And I think there's some very interesting things in the new SNA. Okay, so on the high-level expert group, I think people are probably familiar already. Its purpose is to end this over-reliance on GDP, as they say, make the invisible visible, reflect well-being, inclusion, environmental sustainability. It was mandated by the General Assembly. But crucially, it doesn't seek to replace GDP. It seeks to supplement it, to provide more. I think at our last session, there was a very angry young man from the World Bank who thought we were trying to destroy GDP. I do want to emphasize that is not the purpose of the exercise. The purpose is to add more, and apologies to that World Bank guy if he's here. I didn't mean it that way. It's very much about bringing more to the table, providing new insights. And the idea is to aim for a new framework that allows better decision making, providing more information. And the panel is very highly credentialed. It's like a who's who of economic experts, particularly in the welfare space and also around environmental sustainability. There's a timeline. It will report to the next General Assembly, and following that, there'll be an intergovernmental process where we debate what is recommended. Now, I'm just very quickly give you some idea of their thinking, and their thinking has changed, actually, and not in a way I find that positive, but that's a little bit off the record. Initially, the interim report, which was published last year, kind of included the whole span of thinking about beyond GDP. So firstly, there's always been this debate about whether we physically amend GDP. I think it's actually Dr. Uzir also explained that DOSM is looking at to physically amend the GDP metric to allow for inequality, to allow for environmental loss. So you physically change the GDP metric versus adding additional measures, which is the other approach, which are often referred to as a dashboard approach, whether you have multidimensional metrics, whether you have more indicators that go beyond and provide this bigger picture. So that was their initial report, and it kind of said all of these things are possible and kind of indicated it would move towards developing both just the GDP measures, and they have VGDP, that's value, goods and services, which has a weight on more worthy activities. So things like arms production, for example, would be less weighted, and I guess health provision and healthcare with higher weight. It had EGDP, which actually Dr. Uzir again provided you with the formula for, where you adjust GDP for the distribution, and then SDGP, sustainable GDP, when you allow for environmental loss. Okay, so first round, very broad canvas. And then, as we now move to the proceedings at the second in-person meeting, which was right at the end of January, they kind of moved away from that amending GDP figures, which is a much more controversial thing to do, much more emphasizing a dashboard approach. And they've selected, they said they will select indicators in what they call as three pillars. Those are the green boxes: well-being, equity, inclusion, sustainability. And then they will select indicators under these categories: material well-being, health, education, environmental quality, subjective well-being, social capital and governance. And they will try and use disaggregated data, and they will try and allow for national customization. And now they're selecting these indicators, and they are using these principles for selection: scientific robustness, SDG alignment, policy relevant outcomes, simple to communicate. Okay. Secondly, there was an emphasis on wealth accounting. I promise I'll finish in 2 minutes. Emphasis on wealth accounting, and this is really accounting more within the balance sheet items of the SNA, not really affecting GDP, but providing an account of what is happening to Malaysia's environmental wealth, or what's happening to Malaysia's social welfare wealth. So this kind of satellite accounts within the system, but it would not, I reiterate, involve amending GDP as was previously discussed in the time. And that's an area of controversy. Now, I also want to mention the SNA. The SNA is a separate process which actually prescribes how GDP and these measures and the wider set of national accounts are computed. It's a global standard. I think the new SNA, they always give the date, the SNA 2025 is the 6th edition of the rulebook. It's the 6th renewal. And it was recently agreed by the UN's Statistics Commission, which Dr. Uzir referred to. But this rolls out and prescribes for all member states and for international organizations how to calculate and increase GDP. The thing I wanted to highlight, I think about 30 seconds, is this, these are the key elements where they changed the SNA. So usually the SNA revision is all about measuring new things in the economy and new techniques. And that's a lot of what it did. So these to me are the 5 to 6, so they're actually 6, but I've grouped 2 of them together. Big changes. So one was to better reflect globalization, to better reflect digitalization in economic accounts, to better reflect financial risks and to provide updated institutional sector classifications. But what I highlight is it also provides for the first time within the SNA, within the rules that instruct Dr. Uzir what to do that in Malaysia in terms of calculating these numbers, it prescribes that you must develop, not you're allowed to, not you must, it's voluntary. It has a whole chapter on well-being and sustainability in the SNA. This is very interesting to me, and although it does not mandate the calculation of something like green GDP or equitable GDP, it does facilitate it, because these are the accounts, for example, the system of environmental accounts, which Malaysia already produces, is what you'd use to calculate those GDP metrics. I'm going to stop there. I hope it's been instructive, and I'm happy to take questions and engage. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Fresh from the oven. Yeah. Yesterday, there was a meeting yesterday in New York. Yeah.
It was at the end of January, actually. It's
sorry,
about a month ago. But
this is very new.
Definitely straight out the oven. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing some latest developments happening at the international front in terms of international standardization of
this. SNA, you're right. Dr. Uzir just came back from the Statistical Commission. Sorry, I thought you were referring to the high-level expert group, which was very high-level expert January, and then very recently the Statistician.
Thank you. But anyway, it's fresh from the oven. Thank you. Over to you, Ulo.
The slides are up there.
Sorry, you are.
Thank you, yang berbahagia Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad, Dato Indrani, and of course Dato Tan Sri Uzir, Dato Sri Uzir for its very incisive reporting of what's happening in relation to the other aspects of GDP. I enjoyed it very much. Now, I just spent that much of time given to me to discuss what I think may be interesting in relation to how those people who were invited to the commission to discuss the new GDP, that's Amartya Sen, Joseph Stiglitz, and of course, Utosi in the commission. Next one, please. Next slide, please. The commission headed by Amartya Sen, Joseph Stiglitz, and Jean-Paul Fitosi submitted a report in 2009 calling for broadening the measurement of GDP to include well-being and sustainability, some things that Dato Uzir addressed, to existing measures focusing on production. Although, of course, GDP can also be measured through demand aggregation. That will bring consumption. But of course, they start with production. Kuznets focused on planning using national accounts, model, something that I've also done. And then, of course, it is still important, and he recognized all the other things. Where do you click? Where do you click this? Oh, right. No. Oh. Okay. The revisions recommended by the Commission and Economic Measurement. The Commission headed, sorry, that's the same thing, right? Extensions recommended: change focus from production to well-being, use household perspective, you come back to consumers that way, add distribution and inequality, develop a dashboard. We heard about the dashboard from Dato Uzir, but of course you can do it by the different components of it, and as well as going through the details within that. I saw that in China first. Include sustainability and the environment, address non-market activities, especially the non-remunerated ones, considers objective measures, very much something Amartya Sen has pursued from its philosophical anchor. This is my take. Use a dashboard with several measures, including production, which means to say they did not exclude production though, base GDP, industry, government. I'm talking about the different components where value comes, whether it's pecuniary or otherwise, or monetary or otherwise. Knowledge-creating organizations, schools, polytechnics, colleges, and universities. If you take the quintuple helix, which is what the UN has been promoting, there they talk about university and government, but I've included all knowledge-creating bodies. Address non-pecuniary activities, including all aspects of work undertaken by households and inhabitants' activities in isolated and vulnerable areas, including the environment. For some time, Dato Uzir ended up correcting it. We had lots of people poor, but with no addresses, which is what I feel Azlan complained about how our GDP was being estimated then, but I think he's corrected it. Like the UN's quintuple helix, trace and track all activities that show performance and that should be performed for sustainability, the 17 SDGs. I'd like to mention that I am very much driven by that. The fourth book I'm working on now, with Springer Nature, it's titled Poverty and Inequality in Southeast Asia Towards Mainstreaming Sustainability. A lot of this, including whatever Dato Uzir presented just now, will be there. In fact, it's already there. It's a question of when the book comes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Short and sweet. So you need knowledge-creating organizations, universities as well. What universities do to be included under the GDP, the broader GDP, and of course non-pecuniary, which is quite relevant.
That's one thing that if you look at how the German system is functioning now, including the inclusion of the Fraunhofer model, is to be able to emphasize on industry but with societal focus. It's not just industry driven the way our TVAC is being driven now. Thank you.
Quadruple or quintuple helix here. The Fraunhofer, we got one or two experts from Fraunhofer here. We got a colleague who is very familiar with the Fraunhofer model. Thank you, Prof. And okay, I've got no further comments on that. We'll come back to you later. So that's number 2. Number 3, we have Ms. Laudia. Over to you. It's your turn now.
Okay, thank you. You hear me again. So, cycling is bad for the economy. Surely not. But the argument presented here shows that the cyclist has deprived the economy by not buying a car, getting a car loan, buying fuel, etc. And worse still, does not get obese and instead stays healthy. This has further negative consequences for economic growth as it deprives pharmacists, hospitals, doctors, and contrary to that, a fast food outlet creates jobs. Cardiologists, dentists, weight loss experts, in addition to those working at that outlet. So, what should we choose? In a way, this summarizes in a nutshell the conundrum that we experience between what we pursue in terms of economic growth and personal well-being. While measuring productivity, economic activity might have been important in the early part of the 20th century, as Prof. Uzir mentioned just now, and proved to be a means of improving the lives and living conditions of human beings emerging from the Great Depression, the challenges of the 21st century are different. Climate change, rapidly changing technology, data being king rather than cash even, mental stresses and increasing reasons for anxiety need more than material or financial responses. So we still use the old tool to measure if we are fixing these new challenges adequately. Our focus will be at best diverted, at worst compounding these problems further. So, what should we do? First, we need to define progress, I think. What does progress mean? We have to shift from it being a measurement of economic productivity to people's well-being, we all know that. And in measuring economic productivity, we need to account for environmental externalities and wealth distribution, not purely take a monetary financial snapshot of the situation. And we need to situate economic productivity as part of people's well-being and not the driver of it. I think this point was also touched upon by Dr. Richard and Prof. Ulung just now. So, and the other parts of this dimensions, the other dimensions of people's well-being could be subjective, and they would be related to the environment people live in, the social context we are able to foster, our agency, our access to resources, our access to opportunities, etc. So it needs to be measured using multi-dimensions which money alone cannot capture. So in a sense, we need to have the two buckets, I think, which I've already described. We have to enhance economic productivity measurement, the GDP, adjusted for environmental externalities and wealth distribution across society. And we also need to incorporate measures for well-being, which are qualitative, using indices and so on. And these are some of the things that are attractive about GDP. You know, it is, sorry, I can't see what I'm there. It is quantitative, it's simple, but we really need to move on to the more, important things also, where you measure things both quantitatively and qualitatively. It needs to be dynamic to, take into account many changes that we are facing so rapidly. Outcome needs to be, outcome versus efforts focused. It's, gosh, I can't read all these things, sorry. Anyway, ultimately, it needs to be simple, right? Ultimately, it also needs to be translated into something simple that's understandable. So, what I'd like to propose is, this is what the CSOs are sort of thinking about when we envisage the framework. Of course, you have all the data collection for GDP and SDG indicators that we know, we've already heard. Dato Sri mentioned just now, Dato Sri Uzir. And we also need to then use that to adjust GDP and also look at the well-being indices also that we are doing and we are collecting. And maybe then use all this to come up with that simple headline indicator that GDP is so attractive because it's one headline indicator. Maybe we can have a weighted composite index, right? And I just want, it's something that I would really love to hear your thoughts on. But how do, non-state actors participate in this? CSOs, academics, all of us in this room here. For the first, data collection, we can incorporate citizen-generated data and narratives, right? For adjusting GDP and, well-being index, we can contribute to improving the scope of these indices and identifying any overlaps so that we can harmonize them. And for the weighted composite index, we can participate in determining the weight of component parts of the weighted composite index, right? So maybe GDP has 20%, the well-being index has 30%, whatever not. I mean, that's something that we as a nation should decide together. And what this would bring about is a balanced diagnostic. It would capture cumulative deprivations as well. For example, multidimensional poverty, multidimensional vulnerability, which Dato Sri Uzir mentioned also. can be dynamic so that, it can be nimble, it can capture changes as they happen. And it's also country context driven. But this eventually can also, if we make it into a composite, become one simple, one figure kind of thing, which will also then have that global comparability that, such a beyond GDP framework should encompass as well. So this is roughly the framework that we are looking at, but we really hope that to learn more from our forum today, especially through this panel discussion, about the technical feasibility of these approaches, the available matrices, indices, data, methodology to address the GDP shortcomings in measuring well-being, and the gaps that may still need to be filled in the future. Let's not forget there might be still gaps that we envisage in the future. We may not have the means right now, but we should also put a parking lot for that. All right, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravanya. You've got a specific proposal, weights and others going forward, and this analogy of someone who buys a bicycle and another person who buys a car. So the guy riding a bicycle is not contributing as much to the economy as someone who buys a car for obvious reasons under the current methodology. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lavanya. Next, we have Professor Tan Sri Azlan. Over to you.
Thank you, Za'ba. Before I started, I want to say something that I really want to make sure that you heard it from me. There's nothing wrong about GDP. The only problem is that when we get addicted with GDP. I think Malaysians are addicted to GDP to the point that we forget the rest. And I personally not believe in one number tells all. So trying to put everything under the sky into one number can be disaster. Okay, that is something that you shouldn't forget. Is GDP tells everything? No, we all know this. I think since all of us studying economics, chapter 1 will always say at the end of it that there is something that is missing in GDP calculation. So no one is hiding from that. For example, like if I go to the restaurants, it goes to GDP. If I eat at home, it will not go to GDP, as simple as that. So sometimes it underestimates the role of women, especially at home. What is progress? I mean, there are so many ways of it. It depends on your interest. Some people sleepless when the tiger gets hit by a van on the highway. Sometimes when orang asli, masyarakat orang asli tertinggal, some people become sleepless for that. Sometimes when you see the sky, there's a lot of haze up there. Some people got dizzy with it. So there are many dimensions. There is no one dimension actually. That's why my concern is that trying to put all into one numbers can be very, very, very difficult and will be meaningless. This is the world map common to all of us. We study geography from at least Form 1. We have seen this map, but many of you probably have not seen this map. When you put into GDP, the world economy, the world map changed. 70% of world wealth is actually coming from US, Canada, EU, and the East Asia. So the rest disappear. Look at Africa, it does not appear at all. It becomes too skinny because the GDP is too small. But of course, when you try to put the world map into poverty, then you start to see a different map coming up. America disappear, the European disappear, but suddenly now Africa used to be very skinny, now get too big because you are measuring progress in terms of poverty, and Africa is probably rich in poverty. But when you put it into happiness, that's what Dato Uzir was sharing. Surprisingly, none of the three regions are that happy. Interestingly, in this index, Costa Rica is among the happiest in the world. Just like Terengganu is the happiest. The worry is that, okay, do nothing as long as we are happy. That is very dangerous as well. But of course, there are people who are fighting for happiness, But if you look at the three regions, remember that US is actually the richest, probably, but the colors is orange, they are not happy. On the East Asia, They are quite big in terms of the economy, but they are somewhere in the middle. But in Europe, the economy is big, but it seems like they are happy. For Malaysia, we are somewhere in the middle there, either happy or not happy. It depends on what time you're asking me. This is Malaysia, okay, a little bit economics now, and I will not go too detailed into it. Malaysia's economy is so simple to understand because we are a small, open economy. In my calculation, about 60 to 70% of Malaysian GDP, the one that we are so addicted to, is actually coming from the global economic performance. Trust me, what is happening now in the Strait of Hormuz and so on will be affecting us. If any minister come and say that we will not be affected, just do the garbage. All the crises in Malaysia from 1990 are all triggered by external forces, global. Anything change in the global economy will be affecting us. GDP 5.4%, without crisis 6.5%. What else that you want? That's why every time when Negara, and also actually DOSM who calculated that, and now good, Dato also appear explaining what GDP. Last year 5.2%, wow, that's good, we are okay. But the problem is that there are so many things we are not okay. That's a problem. When you're addicted to morphine, you thought morphine solve all the problems. You know, you got to be careful about that. Now let me give you two cases. This is a messy, don't worry about that. Economists have to be messy at certain points. One side about human. Is there any good ataupun is there any strong association between GDP growth, the one that we addicted to, and Human Development Index? If you look on the left, well, HDI wise, we are increasing, not bad, we are at a very high range. But if you look on the right side, what you see is that there is no clear association. If there are econometrics here, you know what I mean by doing all the testing. But if you see up here, these are more advanced nations have high HDI, but the growth is not that high. So chasing for high growth is something which is wrong, totally wrong. But in Malaysia, we are addicted to that number. So if 5%, 6%, wow, we are doing great. Not knowing that actually it might not even impact the quality of life down there. It might destroy forests, it might kill a lot of things, the climate change is being spoiled and so on. The other one is that, where should I point? I don't know how many of you follow NIMP 2030, New Industrial Master Plan 2030, that was launched I think 2 years back during Tengku Zafar's time, and supposed to be the guidance for us in terms of moving the nation. The first mission, everybody forgot this right now, even I go to meetings sometimes they also forgot. You know, Malaysia mudah lupa is common. Any economist who do long memory test, you will understand what does it mean, right? If you do memory test, you know what it means. What it means that the first mission is advancing economic complexity. The first mission is not about mere increasing export and import. The first mission is structural, advancing economic complexity. Go and check economic complexity, the work of Hidalgo, the work of Ricardo Hausmann and so on, the fact that economic complexity goes down, ranking-wise. And again, you see that the countries that have a high economic complexity are the ones that have low GDP growth. So why are we so addicted with seeing GDP growth has to be as high as possible? Sometimes when you run or you drive too fast also it can give a problem. 97, 98 crisis partly is because what we call as overheating. At that time there's an article talking about Kuala Lumpur, asking Malaysia to slow down. Kuala, not Kuala. Kuala Lumpur. Oh, okay. This is my last slide. The rising tide. You know, when economy, the global economy, country like Malaysia, small open economy, anything good in the world will bring good to us. The rising tide meaning that the big boat, the small boat also will go up. But don't forget that at times, there are things that are not measured by that, not realizing that now the boat, not only a boat, it become a submarine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seri. So addiction to GDP, addiction to growth, you got a few maps of the world, not the conventional maps, map of poverty and environment. Thank you, Tan Sri. Next we have Professor Dr. Rosita from Universiti.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good morning to the distinguished guests and also ladies and gentlemen. So today actually I will discuss a little bit based on my experience as the researcher going to the ground and did the study that related to those topics that needs the data from the ground, okay, rather than compiling it from the DOSM and so on. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, so okay, next. Okay, as you can see here, okay, I'm focusing on the human conflict in rivers. This is actually based on the current study that actually still ongoing. Okay, we are doing on this. Okay, I don't want to give a lecture regarding on the impacts and the conflicts. I believe everyone is know and can see there. But I just want to share that not all the data here, as you can see, the factors and so on, we can find it from the statistic report. If we are talking about the transportation and industrial commercial hub, maybe there are data that we can find from the DOSM website and so on. But most of the other factors, we need to go to the ground. Okay, so there is a gap that we found here. And of course, to identify the conflict also, we need to understand what's actually the people they need and then what are actually they are facing too. And also in order to initiate or suggesting for the improvement or maybe the effective management and so on, the adaptations. So we also need to understand from the ground what they are thinking, what they are facing and what they are thought about the current situation and what will be the best for them. Okay, next. Of course, as the academia, we also have to link with the theory and concept, but this is also sometimes difficult for us because they are not interlinking in terms of the data. The aggregate data may be different, but the micro data will be different. Okay, so we are actually trying our best to do linking the gap between those theory concept and also what happened in the ground. Okay, next. So beyond the GDP, okay, as what you can see, when we did our research, of course we do the desktop study, and of course we look into all the statistic report and so on. That is actually the basic data that we use in order to report it. But when we go in depth into the topics or the issues they want to look at, for example, these studies about the integrated river basin management, we need to collaborate with all the scientists from the science and also the social science. Okay, and of course for the social science we have to go not only depends on the statistic data itself, but we have to go to the down there. Doing the interview, FGD and so on. So that is actually the things that cannot be explained by the GDP. Okay, we can get some data, but there's also in terms of the statistic itself, it means, especially when we do or we focus on a certain area. It's what I understand. I'm happy that now DOSM they are looking into the certain district. So I'm happy to hear that because it's really helped us in order to do this kind of research. And as you can see, for the GDP, it's better to account for the nature capital. Okay, and there's also exclusion of the social inequality, oversights of the non-market values, and also systemic risk blindness. Okay, so that is actually the limitation from the GDP. But what we need is actually there's more needs to disaggregation to the basin levels. Okay, if we are talking about the river or water, but of course the other research we need the different data. Okay, then should be beyond than political borders as what it knows and administrative boundaries. Okay, and incorporating the inclusive income. So there's also need frameworks that must expand to include non-market activities like community managed water system and subsistence farming, where we cannot get this in the aggregate data. Okay, then there's also a need to shifting from the localized or centralized government. So we need to go to the down day, to the local, identify the local voices, and we should include that as the management decisions when we want to suggesting for the some things or the improvement on some systems. Okay, and last but not least, updating the dynamic synergies. In this case, we'll have to combine it within the few SDGs, not only looking at one, but combining with few SDG strategies. So, of course, we have so many index here that also help us to develop the questionnaire, but in the local context, sometimes the setting of the index or maybe the metric itself is not suitable. So that's why it's important to go down there and identify what would be the disadvantage or advantage of using this index in order to fulfill the needs of the study. I think that's all from me. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So Rosita, looking at one particular sector, which is water and rivers, their role in production, in the environment, which is another perspective, looking at one very important sector, water conflicts and others. So thank you, Rosita. Finally, we have Prof. Emeritus Za'ba. Yeah, silakan.
Terima kasih. It is always good to be the last speaker. You know why? Because the thunder has been stolen. Well, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam Malaysia Madani. Salam Ramadan Mubarak to fellow Muslims, Muslimah. Well, nothing wrong with GDP as pointed by Tan Sri Darussalam. I agree. I can agree more. It was designed to actually measure the size of an economy, the value of final goods and services produced by an economy. We all know that. It's best to measure that thing, to measure the value of all marketed outputs, goods and services over a period of 1 year. But it is wrong to use it to measure welfare, to measure well-being. That's the problem. So I will enlighten you on that. It is an issue of material growth versus well-being growth. Material growth is best measured by GDP. We all agree. The whole wide world agrees with that. But to measure well-being, to what extent we have grown in terms of our progress, true progress, or well-being, GDP certainly is only a proxy. It's not the best way, not the best approach. Let me pose you a simple question. Let's say Malaysians smoke, the value of cigarettes consumed by Malaysians, say 500 million. It goes directly to GDP, right? That's perfectly right. But does it improve our welfare? Is it welfare, what you call it, formation? Is there any new welfare formation there by smoking? No. Let's say our government spends 500 million to clean up our polluted rivers. It goes to increasing our GDP, right? That is perfectly the right thing to do. But what you will say about welfare improving or any new welfare formation? Does it create any new welfare, any new well-being by spending 500 million? Although your polluted rivers will get cleaned up. No, it doesn't lead to any new welfare formation. Because 500 million is only one way for us to go back to our initial welfare, initial utility, whereby the government must maintain from the very beginning that all our rivers shall need to be maintained. No, there shall be no polluted rivers in our country. That is the baseline. So by spending 500 million, it doesn't lead to any new welfare formation. Okay, I'm not going to talk about this. Next slide, please. Now, before I talk about the GPI, Genuine Progress Indicator, or we can also call it Genuine Prosperity Indicator, is only one approaches within the class of beyond GDP indicators. Other measures would include the green GDP based on the new manual on environment and economies, SEEA, the UNSC. You also have the World Bank genuine savings measure, which lead to adjusted net domestic product. And you also have the inclusive wealth indicator. And GPI, Genuine Progress Indicator, is one of these measures under the class of beyond GDP measure. Okay, here, GPI is a unified, like GDP, a unified money metric measure because it is a money metric. We use dollars and cents to measure the various attributes, and using this is quite technical, Hicksian income approach that captures income distribution, ecological costs, and non-market activities to better reflect sustainable progress and to complement GDP. Well, here I like to link with the Malaysian Madani core values. The synergy between GPI and the core Madani values. I'm not going to explain this because it will take some time. And now here, GPI. This is the nice thing of GPI. It starts with welfare improving personal consumption expenditures. Where do we get these figures? It came from our GDP accounts. It came from DOSM. So we obtain these figures on consumption expenditures, but we only consider the welfare improving expenditures. Then we add positive non-monetized contribution and subtract cost of negative externalities like pollution, crime, resource depletion, and defensive or rehabilitative public expenditures. For example of defensive public expenditure is cost of pollution cleanup, like the one I mentioned earlier. Example of non-welfare improving personal consumption is smoking or perhaps consumption of liquor, although this can be debatable. And some other examples of rehabilitative or defensive is consumer durables. Let's suppose, just 1 minute, anyway, next slide, the last slide. Now, these have been the estimations for Malaysian GPI for 1990 through 2023. I have the latest estimation as well through 2025. Through 2026. Sorry, I'm confused. Through last year, 2025. But here I present only through 2023. There are three categories: social, economy, and environment. For social dimension, we have, for example, the components here: welfare from higher education, welfare from unpaid household worker, cost of crime, cost of drug addiction, cost of family breakdown, and welfare from research and development. And we have the social component of GPI for Malaysia is growing up. And for the economic dimension, we have a host of attributes here: welfare from public infrastructure, services from consumer durables, final consumption expenditure. Of course, we adjust it. We only consider the welfare improving expenditures. Final consumption expenditure, we only consider the welfare improving expenditure. These are the negative elements here. Here is the net result for the economic dimension. It's also growing nicely. For environment, you can see this is really a clear downtrend. Anyway, these have been the line chart here for these three categories. And in the end, if you compare with GDP, for Malaysian GPI, which is this green line here, we perform way better than that of GDP. This is a good thing. Very rare, not very many countries are showing this kind of outcome. For Malaysia, our GPI is growing a lot faster than that of GDP. Bear in mind, you can see this sharp showed a negative trend here simply because of the declining income distribution. We use median income over mean income, median household income over mean income. We can also use the Gini coefficient to measure income distribution. So our growth path, our trajectory of GDP very much depends on income distribution. If you have an improvement in income distribution, then it would also, directly impact GPI positively. So the point here is that if you really want to grow well-being, then the right measure is not GDP, but beyond GDP, particularly the GPI measure, which is a more, I call it more accurate dashboard or scoreboard. So I think that's all. I think I have no more time left here. Right.
Thank you, Prof. Za'ba. Genuine progress indicator. Very interesting. The line for the GPI is higher, if I hear correctly, higher than the growth rate. The GDP measured in conventional way, yeah? Prof, yeah? The GPI line is higher, yeah. Okay, so we've heard from 6 distinguished panelists. We've heard from Dr. Uzir. It's good to leave. Thank you, Dr. Seri, for joining us. We got 15 minutes. This is our slot, and then over to you at 12 noon. I've only got 2 questions to be shared between 6 of you. So you might want to, I want each one of you to comment on these 3 questions. Yeah? Go one by one, starting with you, Prof, and then Prof Ulong, and ending with Professor Rosita. 2 questions. One is, in terms of data measurement, of course we know the limitations, good snacks, when invented this 90 years ago, highlighted the pitfalls, weaknesses of using this measure as a measure of progress. And to be fair, I think in Malaysia we have Za'ba and YBhg, we come up with various other measures of poverty and income, Sarong Index, and Za'ba talk about holistic nature of poverty and education, not just an income. So in actual fact, Za'ba and YBhg probably predated what Amartya Sen and others, the Nobel laureates. By the way, so we have our own history. So 2 very simple questions. I would like each one of you to respond to those questions, 2-3 minutes, and then we pass this panel discussion to the floor. Repeat. One is in terms of data, are we moving, are we progressing well at the global level and national level in terms of developing a consensus, in terms of converting into one common value, so the national accounts are so simple, converted to money terms, except it doesn't measure the non-pecuniary production. So the other question is, are you happy with the level of alignment in Malaysia with all these other indicators, happiness, well-being, crime? I hope it's clear. One is, which way are we making good progress at the global and national level in terms of coming to a consensus on beyond GDP? And secondly, are you happy with the level of alignment? Is it being embedded enough? It is embedded, of course, the government says that, but is it embedded enough? All these other indicators that we've been talking about. Okay, so we start with, I want to be simple, go this way. Prof. Jamal, we give you 3 minutes to respond to those 3 questions. 2 questions.
Okay, first, in terms of GDP accounts, I think Malaysia is very much at the forefront, particularly in terms of transparency. Everyone can access to the GDP figures, including the details of the various accounts under the so-called national accounts that lead to the GDP figures. But apparently, data like input-output table, social accounting metric, which are very important source of data for GDP, we are quite, not punctual enough. Even compared to Indonesia, they are way more punctual to come up with the social accounting metrics. Perhaps yearly they are able to produce that, but apparently Malaysia not yet. There is progress for sure, but it's not timely enough. And when you talk about data required for beyond GDP, first we need to specify which beyond GDP indicator that we would like to implement. Because there are a number of methods, a number of approaches under the class of beyond GDP indicators which require very different data. For example, when you talk about, if you like to look at the inclusive wealth indicator, here inclusive wealth refers mainly to the three types of capital: man-made capital, natural resources, and human capital. So we need to really identify what are the components for each of these categories. Human-made capital, human resource, as well as natural capital. So once we have identified these, then only we can identify whether or not we have adequate data to support this. Even for GPI, I was facing a number of difficulties. For example, when I wanted to look at the cost of family institution breakdown, that's not easy. So what we do is we consult JAKIN, we consult the various district officers in order to come up with the national figures on the divorce rates. Case penceraian in seluruh Malaysia. That's not easy. DOSM doesn't have that figures. We need to come up, we need to impute the value for each case, for each court case. Well, there are good things which really support much of our work on beyond GDP, but there are something which need improvement there. Yeah, wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. I think we will have to go back to the reasons why there was an attempt and for Amartya Sen and Joseph Stiglitz to come up with alternative measures. Remember that they recommended that we have a dashboard with lots of different components to it. One of them is GDP, just one of them. So you can have the one, for example, this was started off really by Mahbubul Haq on looking at different aspects of poverty. And then of course Amartya Sen took on that, and then Magnet Desai, who developed the Human Development Index. Now that actually recognizes that when planning takes place, the role of the government is not just about capturing what is created, but what is done to address the problems societies face. So that's already a justification why you should have all the different measures. So I don't see a problem with that. But now, should we have just one or two measures? I think we should have what they had recommended as a dashboard. And to achieve them, and in the case of Norway, before the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals were established by the UN, Norway had already implemented it, which is why the Global Innovation Index of Norway is relatively falling. Today, the highest gross expenditure in R&D are recorded by South Korea and Israel. Norway has fallen because they emphasize all other aspects of it incorporated in their national planning. So I think this is the way to go. We can then detail on what specific ones we should look at that is peculiar to Malaysia, because we are in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'll echo what others said. I think Malaysia's pretty far ahead in terms of data, your first question. And it is true, DOSM has been a real trailblazer globally. I'm not just being very complimentary, but DOSM is very central to many of these discussions and is advanced on work, both in the social space and the well-being index, and also in the system of environmental economic accounts. But I think what I'd emphasize, though, is this point I made kind of in my off-the-record comment. And I think it's I prefer measures which literally we keep GDP but offer other forms of GDP, adjusted forms of GDP. The kind of, as Dr. Uzir showed us, adjusting GDP, for environment, for distribution to be presented alongside GDP. And the reason I make that argument rather than less favouring a dashboard is because policymakers tend to focus on small aggregate numbers. And I think that's why GPI is useful, and I think it's why HDI is useful. It's very well having a dashboard, but I don't think it'll ever get the policy prominence that GDP will do. Finally, on alignment, I think alignment is also much better in the post-SDGs. The government here takes the SDG. I've been in 6 countries. I think it's one of the countries where the SDG is taken very, very seriously. You'll find in in the performance statements of ministries, in the 13th Malaysia plan, there's alignment with SDGs. And that's having a metric bespoke, for the alignment of the government's policy making. I think that's also very strong. That's something you want to preserve when SDGs end, and perhaps that's what the dashboard provides you with. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll try and answer both the questions that those Topa. For data, I agree. I think Malaysia has got quite a lot of data. We've heard about it already, but I think there's a lot more out there as well that people are collecting, people are working on. Many of you in this room will probably be able to share some of those other things that we can also put into this mix, because ultimately we need to design something that is relevant within the Malaysian context. But I think there are pockets of information that we can still draw upon to improve what we already have. And I think that's what the collaboration, that we have with Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance and DOSM with the MOU enables for us to draw upon all the rich data sets. I mean, what Dr. Rosita talked about as well, all this information, we need to find a way to come together and make it something more meaningful, make it more relevant. It is a wicked problem, no doubt, because yes, as Richard said, GDP is so much easier to manage, it's very quantitative, but it is something that we need to grapple with, because otherwise we are going down the rabbit hole and don't know what we're chasing, right? Now, in terms of the second question, Topa, level of alignment in Malaysia, I think on broad policy documents, there is very good sound bites, if you'd like. Okay, I'm going to play a bit of a devil's advocate here, but yes, there are good sound bites. It's very well represented in a lot of our policy statements, but when it actually comes down to decisions of where we really push certain things, it's unfortunately driven very, very strongly by what it means for GDP. I'll give you two examples. One is, with our energy transition and our climate goals. We have our net zero goal, we have our NDC targets. But one of the key things that we are pursuing is something called carbon capture, utilization and storage, right? Where we're actually going to draw the carbon and put it into, depleted oils and so on. But there is an environmental consideration that maybe we are not taking strongly enough. I won't go into details, but the driver for that is really the GDP value that we'll bring. We'll bring in investments, we'll bring in, we'll import carbon, in fact, from other countries to store in our depleted oil wells. So, question mark, right? I don't know whether this is the right way forward, right? We do think about it from a beyond GDP perspective. The other one is on rare earth elements, okay? Again, it's linked to addressing climate change, because we do need these things for renewable energy, for battery storage, etc. But where are these resources coming from? In Malaysia, we've apparently got trillions of these deposits, but most of it is where our forests, which absorb carbon, naturally are, where our biodiversity thrive, and where a lot of indigenous communities, and even us, although we don't realize it, really rely on the ecological services that we receive. So, but the idea is to go and extract that, because that's money, right? And we may not extract the rare earth elements if they are under the Twin Towers, Petronas Twin Towers, for example, but we would go into the forest. So this is where I think there is still a policy discord when it comes to pursuing actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Understood. Thank you. Azlan.
Thank you. A few minutes. I'm a supporter of beyond GDP, but I also would like to put some concerns. Sometimes, when you try to do too many things in one simplified number, it can be very difficult. I'm looking at the photo at the back for Aziz there. If you guys understand, the Sarun index is so simple. How many salaries divided by the number of households? You know, we are super minority in the whole country. I think a lot of things that we discuss here, if you discuss in my kampung, no one will understand this at all. You know, when I look at, I'm so sorry for saying this, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I know economists like us, I mean, I did my PhD, many of us are economists, the more complex, the more difficult, the better it is. You know, when we released MDI, the multidimensional index, so many people call me and say that, what is these numbers? You know, of course I have to explain, if you are rich, but you are in the jungle, the school is far away from you, you are poor. Then I say, oh yeah, like that. No, if you're rich, you live, if you're poor, but you live in the city, but the school is so near to you, the doctors are near to you, you are rich. Wow, that's complicated, man. And when I look at the number, if I may read here, MDI, yang DOSM plus, sorry lah, Dato Seri Uzir is not here. Years of schooling, the number is 0.003, improved to 0.0001. I remember in one of the quite high level meeting when the first thing was tabled like this, I'm the one who did, what does it mean? 0.003 to 0.001 is 0 one. I mean, you know, if we round it up, so be careful about trying to put everything into one numbers. You know, it's too complex to the point that it does not carry any meanings. I just want to utter one small thing. Our PM was always talking about manusiawi. The numbers have to be humanized. The numbers must be understood in the simplest possible way. You know, a lot of numbers are not saying that. So, common people, the numbers are not for us. The numbers are for the whole nation. Everybody must understand that. But if you say that your income is 300 ringgit, yeah, you are poor. But if I say that you are actually 0.0003, am I poor? They got confused. So a lot of macro numbers are like that. But my concern is that I like maybe the approach of Prof. Jamal that not to say to have all of them, but we only need to alert the nation that GDP is okay. But it didn't tell everything. Don't get addicted with GDP. I'm saying this strong because I think the nation, the government always proving they are doing right when GDP looks great. But the structural problem is still there. Unemployed graduate is still there. Poor distribution is still there. 60% of GDP come only from Penang, KL, Selangor and Johor. The rest are not contributing, they are contributed very little. Do you know how much investment is coming? A lot, but only 4 or 5 states benefited from that. So the issue of distribution, the rest of the characters, the features, the export might go up. Is the export goes up because of semiconductor, or is it because of we are sending oil pump or raw earth? I mean, that matters. It's not just the numbers. So I think the nation need to be alerted about that. I mean, I'm disagree about removing GDP. Comparability across the world is very important, but we need to convince people that there are many other things that matters in our progress of the nation. And don't get too complex. It's so difficult to put the number of tigers dead with how much car is being sold. It's very difficult to quantify that. I mean, economy you allow to us, we can give you all the numbers. It's 0.0003. Zero. Thank you.
Okay, don't be too carried away by good numbers. Thank you, Dr. Rosita and Prof. Pulau want to okay, Dr. Rosita.
Okay, thank you, Dato. Okay, this is actually from my perspective as a mere researcher and also those who are doing studies on the ground. Okay, so we have a lot of data here. As I mentioned just now, we have the aggregate data and so on, but not all the data we can use in order to explain what has happened down there. So there's a mislinkages between of the data that we found here, and I also do agree when we talk about, for example, like when we did the study that related to environmental aspect, there are missing data that we cannot find from the established database. but we still need to go down there, identify it qualitatively and quantitatively from the interview and so on. So the data is okay, but there is still need in terms of the improvement and also providing more micro data, okay, so that it can enrich in terms of doing the research or proposing for some improvement in some policies and so on. Okay. For the second questions, I do agree. We have a lot of policies and so on. We have a lot of index and so on. But when we talk about a policy, I still remember when I did a study asking the farmers what they understand about the policy and did they think that it's actually working on with them. But it seems like our policy is very, beautiful. It's writing there, but what happened is it is actually not implemented so well at the down there. So they are missed in some way. Okay. There's the policy, but in terms of the implementations, there are some problems that we found there. So that's other thing that we need to see and need to improve from time to time. Okay, that's our problem.
Thank you. So it doesn't look good at the micro level. I have a small problem with rivers. We've been saying that our rivers are quite okay. I think many of our rivers are not okay. So that has got to do with standards. I mean, how you benchmark yourself. You have low standards, of course, the rivers are very great, but you have high standards, the rivers are in bad shape. Anyway, that's my personal problem with rivers. So, final word from Prof. Ulung, and then we go to open the floor for discussion. Yes, Sila.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that for a long time, the World Bank, especially Dr. Israt Hussain, was in charge of the Department of Poverty. He mentioned that the focus of developing countries should be on type 1 poverty, which is poverty incidence, not on the Gini coefficient or the Palma ratio or whatever other alternatives that you use to measure distribution. But let's look at it. There's a book by James Galbraith on poverty. He actually speaks about the US and the UK. The nature of policies are very liberal in that sense, not favoring in any way the poor, except that the UK has the National Healthcare Service, the US doesn't have that. So he's actually mentioning inequality has completely the other way around, as it's increased substantially compared to the Nordic countries. So you might want to read that. It's by James Galbraith, 2010, Oxford University Press. Now coming to that sort of point, if we take that sort of a role, then planning is for whom? You'll have to go back and ask this question, planning is for whom? If it's for development, you're talking about the whole society. Welfare becomes central. So my own feeling is there's more recognition now, especially after the UN passed the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. I think that's the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, now is I would call the climax of this morning's discussion, which is question from the floor. As a general guide, cut down on the comments, just go direct to the questions. Question will be 1 minute. So we'll take three at a time, and then we'll get our distinguished panelists to respond to those questions. So the first batch of three, you introduce yourself, where you're from, and shoot straight away, okay? Boleh? Okay, you have floor, microphones, corners, anyway? Okay. Yoli from Third World Network.
Thank you very much, Dato. I'm Yoklin from the World Network. And thank you to the panelists, and I think it was really refreshing to sort of see how much work has been done. Congrats, Indrani and team. I just wanted to ask, it's not enough if individual countries try to do this. So how do we take into account the international dimension and the countries which have more power and they are resisting some of these fundamental things? And we see this happening in the UN. Just how do we make that connection? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next. Yes.
Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Saya Muhammad Shani Abdullah. Memang cara beyond GDP adalah satu metodologi yang wajar digunakan untuk pembangunan well-being. Tetapi ini menghadapi cabaran kerana integriti institusi, keberkesanan dasar awam dan keyakinan pelabur dan rakyat. So, apa yang kita dengar itu lebih teori, tetapi ini tidak akan capai objektifnya kalau institusi sendiri tidak menggarap objektif pendekatan ini. Terima kasih.
Okay, next.
Salam Dato Sri and our panelists. I'm Shakir from SEM. It was very interesting from Tan Sri just now in terms of GDPs is okay, but others matters, right? I was just wondering in terms of, I'm not economist, but I try to understand in terms of from the industry perspective, they are more focusing on productivity, and then productivity will create value and of course contribute to the GDP. But when industry matters on productions, we do have so many innovations, especially in universities, and we try to propose all kind of like green technologies and whatnot, especially at the community levels and whatnot. Right, but at the end of the day, this seems stuck because of the industry is not much interested because of this. Of course, when we propose on greens, means that some productivity might be, reduced, not as expected as the conventional ones. So how do we balance this so that we can go beyond GDP? If not, I think our innovation will be stuck because of the concern or our focus is on productivity per se. Thank you.
Thank you. One on power, one on innovation, one on institutions and praising some of the principles. So we have first set of three. Over to you. I'm asking for volunteers. Are there three questions in one go or one by one? Leave it to you. Okay, who's going to first? Okay, the treasurer, Richard.
Okay, we have two. Yes, this question, I think, asking about international adoption. That's precisely what the high-level panel is about. And of course, then that's given effect, right, in terms of country practice. But I think, Malaysia and countries like Malaysia are in a good position to feed into that process, right? There is outreach taking place, through the panel, through their secretariat, which is run by UNCTAD. And Malaysia needs to make its voice heard there. There's a civil society movement organised by the government of Spain. There's also a governmental arm chaired by the government of Spain. These are vehicles, I think, through which you can press, to get what Malaysia thinks is the best way to go on beyond GDP. And of course, internationally, the idea is that at some point, the high-level panel's recommendations, after the governmental process, sorry, I'm doing wrong, maybe two, that these would be adopted and given the weight to kind of, I'm not sure, it's not been clarified, but I imagine the kind of weight that you see in the SNA, an instruction that all countries have to calculate these measures and to provide these measures, to allow comparability and ensure that everybody's reporting, that allows that international discourse to take place. But, I emphasize Malaysia needs to push these ideas, and I think, you're well positioned, with DOSM's international network and also with its work in these areas. So I'm not so pessimistic, to be honest. You're right, there is resistance. And that resistance is generally a pushback to anything that kind of takes away from GDP. And you saw that I said that these adjusted GDP figures have been somewhat downplayed more towards a dashboard, which moves us away from that. So you're right, there is, but other countries will always do this. And I think it's important for Malaysia and other countries, in their network to put forward its position and use these instruments to get the outcome it wants.
Let me answer the question in two languages, because there was one question, I think, in Malay. But coming to the first one, I think, and that also means I limit myself to one question. I think there's been policy that's been advised. The UN very much keeps in touch with the Sustainable Development Goal, the achievement by 2030. Of course, many of these countries, including Southeast Asia, will not meet it, but at least they are getting close to it. So, and that also means some countries getting assistance from the UN in terms of achieving that. That's also coming out in the poverty book that I'm doing for Spring and Nature. Now, untuk terjemahkannya, ada pemantauan dan pelaksanaan dasar-dasar yang dilancarkan oleh bangsa-bangsa bersatu, dan pelaksanaan itu juga bermakna bukan hanya menghitung sejauh mana mereka telah sampai berasaskan sasaran, tetapi juga mereka juga memberi sumbangan dana, membantu dan juga nasihat bagaimana sesuatu itu boleh berlaku, termasuk juga which includes severe climate change practices, bermakna kepulauan Pasifik umpamanya yang dilanda macam-macam krisis berasaskan ocean, lautan yang memisahkan satu pulau daripadanya beberapa ratusan batu. Jadi in that sense there is fellowship, adanya nasihat, begitu juga dengan bantuan yang diberi oleh bangsa-bangsa bersatu.
Okay. I would like to respond on the issue of integrity and institutions. You know, I mean, public reporting in Malaysia normally is being done by government agencies. But the trust on government is very low. Ministry of Education, for example, throughout my life, every year the report of exams is getting better and better and better and better and better and better. Never had any problem at all. This year we are better. Last year better than last year, better. But when we look at the other report, then we are going the other way around. You know, trust is very important. Who reports, who compile. I think it is time for Malaysia. If we do not want to remove the government totally in terms of reporting, maybe we need to have more like an independent structure. Involve the NGOs, involve the private sectors, involve the champions with the government and scientists, so that we give a fair reporting. You know, sorry to say, I wish that Seri was here, because I really want to talk about MDI and also the Kebahagiaan Index. I don't know how many of you really believe the Kebahagiaan Index. You know, it's totally the other way around. If you put income bar chart, it goes like that. The same state, if you go Kebahagiaan the other way around. So what is actually we are telling? It's okay to be poor as long as you are bahagia. I mean, is it all? Is it the right message to be up? I think, but in terms of institution, again, I seriously believe that the way government do things have to change. Reporting it only meaningful if people trust that information. So far, sorry to say, a lot of reports that I've looked from the government index and so on, we are a country free of problem. We don't have any problem at all. So we need a new structure of doing beyond GDP. Sejahtera, not sejahtera. You tanya all the officers, all family are bahagia. You know, we have, everybody is healthy. No one has problem. So we need a different structure. I really agree in terms of integrity and trust in terms of reporting, more so those items, the so-called beyond GDP item. If not, everything is clear. All rivers are very clean, don't worry. Thank you.
It's a very great comments. Yeah? One final one before we go to the next three.
I just wanted to touch on Joaquin's point, and following up from what Richard said. I think we can also maybe take some courage with what's happened in the past also. So with Bhutan was the first country to do an alternative indicator with the happiness index. But that's become more ubiquitous now, with, from the 70s where it was just this lone voice. Even the early 2000s, people would sort of chuckle a little bit when you hear about gross happiness index, but now it's become something that's more mainstream. Similarly, you have the well-being economies that are also looking at progress differently, right? All the lands, the New Zealand and the Iceland and the Greenland and whatnot, Canada as well. So maybe there are these examples that we should also look at and see how we can build on that. And I totally agree, we as Malaysia should punch above our weight and contribute as well. In terms of the innovation bit, I just wanted to very quickly say that actually pursuing these things differently gives a lot of fodder, if you like, for innovation, right? So I recently read this book, Net Positive, by the CEO, the former CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman. And he makes a very compelling case for setting goals that really are going beyond GDP, net positive, and he talks about building stakeholder value rather than just shareholder value. He talks about looking at it long term rather than short term. Looks at it from a purpose-driven perspective. What is the purpose that you're serving rather than just simply narrow focus on profit? So I think there are good examples out there which we can also lean on.
Okay, some good examples in the corporate sector, multinationals. Nestle is probably one of them. The next three, please. I'm leaving to the... you go to...
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dr. Noor. I'm from Jungle School Gombak, Malaysia, as well as UIAM. Okay, talking about beyond GDP, I think one of the panelists also mentioned about green GDP. And another thing that I would like to highlight is about the gross national happiness, like what Bhutan is doing. So I feel that, for example, we are focusing on indigenous people, orang asli, orang South, and the indigenous who are living in the jungle, they are very confused why people are saying that they are B40 and not happy. And people will go there telling them they are very poor. But then their gross happiness index is actually happy because they don't need so much money, but they are very concerned about their youngster because their youngster is living and has to coexist with the modern world. So maybe any of the panelists can respond to that. Are we going towards gross national happiness? Thank you.
Next.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mei-Ling from World Bank, and I'm not the young angry man. I'm hopefully the older, wiser woman. It's okay, Richard. And I actually feel more at home here. So my question is, how can we institutionalize the policy making better in the institutions and to increase trust and governance? Because there are two issues that were brought up, highlighted. So Tan Sri, just now you brought up about subnational growth or the lack of, because most of the economic activities, the investments goes to four states. So we have 20 years ago all the ECER, the regional economic corridors, NCER, etc. Having learned, what can we learn from the past? And then says this has not worked. What can we change? Federal-state relations and also governance. And then second also, how can we learn better from other countries, not just Europe, but perhaps Singapore, and have that courage to go on the ground because it's just next door and it's cheaper. So they have this green economic, green corridors where you can cycle and walk all over Singapore, and that was laid to plan 2008, and now you can cycle more than 300 kilometers and it's still ongoing. And Singapore, in our recent World Bank report on healthcare on Asia Pacific, is the only country in Asia Pacific where the incidence of NCDs, non-communicable diseases, heart, stroke, etc., is the only country that has decreased. And you can also have free spaces for all families to be inclusive, to be healthy. They don't have to be in the shopping mall. So I think this beyond GDP is very important. How can we institutionalize this awareness and understanding in policymakers, in the ministers, and also this question is also for you, Topan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I've learned a lot from it. My name is Suan, I'm from YBhg SDG. So just following up for the questions just now, the timing is quite good. And also to the question of the institutionalizations and the networking of it. I think that the forum in itself overall is quite good, but then I felt like there is still a gap, or rather the objective that we still have not really achieved, which is really how is it that we can be able to work together. For your information, DOSM has also signed MOU with 23 IPT across Malaysia, together with the CSO SDG Alliance. So in terms of that kind of a partnership, it is there. But then, like what Tan Sri has just presented just now, I believe that a lot of these, what we have done in the IPT in terms of the studies, they are not really reflected in the data that he has presented. So what happened to those MOU? I believe there are challenges. It's not, and the institutionalization is not something that the government should initiate. It is supposed to be a reciprocal kind of a relationships that happening between the IPT, between the CSO, and also the government. It's not for the government to structuralize that kind of a partnership. So maybe there are also challenges here that we can hear about, or what are the things since the MOU signing, what are the concrete kind of steps that have been taken, or if there's something that is in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Second set of three, partnership, happiness index, and learning from ourselves and also from others. Okay? Responses? Some general questions, some are observations. Yeah, okay.
I'll take the microphone. Okay. I mean, for the last two questions, I mean, in terms of institutions, the most important thing for me now, which I've been said it loud quite many times, that the day where government knows all, government do all is just over. Malaysia must change the way we run the nation. There are things that the government is good at and should be doing by government, but there are things that other parties might be better doing it, also at least at the end of it to form a network. It's just short. I mean, some of you may Google governing by network. That the way forward is that to have this network of running the government. You know, the subject that we discussed especially would seriously requires the involvement of CSO, networks, academics, and all sorts of different group of society. I mean, I will totally object and to say that, because government really want to say that they are doing wrong. I mean, you look at the report of KPKT on the PBT, all PBT are doing great, right? No PBT having problems. But all the toilets are all dirty. No, but suddenly there's orang yang menang anugerah toilet bersih. I just confused. I mean, jadi in terms of institutionalizing it, we probably, most of us, not from the proper Putrajaya officers, have to promote the idea of governing by network. Now, for example, I sit long in the NDPC. NDPC is a National Development Planning Committee. I have seen more than 20-30 master plans. But no one talks about what the previous master plan has done. The new master plan comes, we do big launching, never talk about the previous master plan. When the draft Malaysia plan keluar, the Topa was the minister. I was next officer Topa during COVID time. In the report, sorry to say this, in the report of a draft Malaysia plan, there is a statements, how many of the targets that we want to achieve in 11 Malaysia plan has been achieved. It is a declaration. 85 of 113 are not achieved, no one pay attention to it. That's why kita Malaysia mudah lupa. You know, we do a lot of plan, but we never talk about what happened to the plan. And we come plan after plan after plan after plan. You know, and we say the same thing. Only a different jargons, you know, different terminologies, tiang, tonggak, ikhtiar, all those kind of things. Happiness, I know I like to be happy. I mean, everyone wants to be happy, but I honestly, in a very honest view, I think it is very risky to come up with one happiness index for all. What you are happy with, I'm not happy. For example, you know, again, you are right. Masyarakat orang asal, I remember that at one time, one of the state government give all the modern housing for them. But that's not suit for their culture, and so on. So that's not happiness. But for many of us, if you give me a house, I'm happy, right? So happiness is very, very so-called, if it is not individual, it might be society specific. So again, I mean, if you look at the indeks kebahagiaan tadi, Selangor, KL, all are not happy because traffic jams are here. I mean, just because of that, you're not happy. I mean, there we say that you're not happy, you better move to Jeli. Dato Seri is number 2 in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken. The most happiest state, city. Pindah to Jeli lah. Thank you. I'm promoting Jeli. Thank you.
Sorry, it's number 1, not number 2.
Okay, I need to begin by apologising to Beling and the World Bank. I shouldn't have said that. I was just trying to bring out the importance of GDP and how we work like this. My apologies for that. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about happiness too. This is an issue that's often presented to economists and to statisticians, you know, particularly with these communities, indigenous communities. Not only do they value things differently, perhaps, they also have different access to services they consume in a different way. You know, you and I, we go to Darussalam, for example, to buy bread. They don't do that, right? And I think it's part of problem of methodology, and then a part of problem of perception. But there are still methodological issues, right? Many much poorer countries, for example, Malaysia, they don't use income to measure poverty. They look at consumption and they impute what people consume. Of course, Malaysia is very advanced and almost a high-income country. The DOSM rightly uses income, but perhaps there's some room, you know, in those communities to get a better handle on their welfare by, you know, valuing their consumption, going back to those kind of old methods. It would be a departure from what Malaysia does for regular relations, but this, I think, would be helpful to try and tell a better story. And then, of course, there's the perception one, and I defer to the discussion. I agree, but I still think there's a role for subjective measures of welfare. And I think this is what CSO's coming as well, right? I still think it's useful to ask people for happiness. Like, one final thing, though, I don't think it's only traffic jams, honestly, sir. Like, and the research has really shown that inequality is really strongly correlated with unhappiness, right? You know, particularly if you look internationally. You know, I am an Anglo person, but the Anglo economies are generally more unhappy than the Scandinavian economies. And maybe it has to do with inequality, which is present in those areas. And I don't think people have read the book, Spirit Level, you know, 20 years old now, but there is a strong literature now that says inequality is very, very significant for how you feel about the world and how you feel about the welfare. So I think it's important also to have.
Which is why what the SAN called for in the multidimensional poverty index, key to have SDG 1, which is on eradicating poverty, ending hunger, SDG 2, addressing health, SDG 3, and quality education, SDG 4. Of course, housing is also there, which is SDG 6, housing and sanitation. But coming back to this point here, I think a lot of things are happening. I myself left the financial advisory role I played with the Prime Minister, simply because there was a complete disagreement, an impasse. I called for GST, but Padu to pay back the B40, because you mentioned that and created it. I was also involved in creating a Padu. All the details are there. So whatever the poor pays for, the B40 will get back whatever they paid. Unfortunately, they chose to take a political line, and in fact, when they were saying that SST is pro-poor and GST is anti-poor, I openly said that on TV that this is a lie. It's not true at all. Both are, if not addressed properly, both of them can be anti-poor. But anyway, coming back to this point, I think there's something I'm working on now which is really important. If you look at civil society as one of the quintuple helix, which is already there in terms of how it is promoted, civil society. Civil society there includes trade unions, central to how the Fraunhofer system and the dual training system in Germany functions, as well as the UAC and the Kosen system in Japan and the state-led system in China. Trade unions are quite central. But unfortunately, the way trade unions have evolved here, through the sort of communist origins that they have, we don't have this mutual gains organization sort the way Tom Cook presents it. Unless you have that, which is how the DGB in Germany, along with the argumental groups, for example, they work together, they come to an agreement. Why do you think it's important to have training, the kind of training they do, as well as R&D in the Fraunhofer Institute? I think that hasn't really got onto our system here. I think they need to find a way to reform trade unions so that they become participants, because they are the main representatives in the labor market for workers. So I think if we don't take that, so I'm not sure how synergies can be raised, but it should also mean that we should try to reform them in a way where they don't become confrontational in the way the system was during colonial rule. I'll make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the second set of three. Next set of three. Yeah. Mahidin. Yeah. And Ahmad. I'm going to have my brain and for the gender balance. Okay, good. Ahmad Ibrahim, Prof. Rashila, and two ladies, 2 men and 2 ladies. This one is 4. Okay, you first.
Thank you, Dato Sri. I just want to follow up on Prof. Noor Azlan's comments on trust, which is very important because there's not only trust deficit on government institutions, but also the corporate sector, and also the even the third sector. Yeah. So I think it's important to measure that and to see how we can overcome trust deficit in this country. And in relation to that, I saw Prof. Jamal just now was having these Madrani values on the left-hand side. So some other, we are also measuring some aspect on what we call social cohesion and national unity and harmony, because this will impact on the economy as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. My brain. Hang on. You have a chance, no problem. Yeah. Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I'm Matt from UCSI University and also Ghazali Center. I would like to take back the story of the bicycle and the car. You see, a bicycle, if you talk about GDP, the car is higher GDP, bicycle less. But in terms of taking care of environment and social, the bicycle is a better choice. Now, I think the issue is the economic model. The model of the economy that we are pursuing is not producing the right balance between economy, social, and environment. We are doing linear economy. So my contention is that we have to move towards a circular economy. Circular economy is where products should last as long as possible. There is no pressure on new resources, and there is no pressure on waste. There will be less waste. Now, the bicycle is a good model, but the car will have to be designed like a bicycle. Because a bicycle cannot take us very far, but the car can. So the car has to be redesigned so that it's easy to repair, it lasts longer, it has less pressure on the resources. It's the resources that are unsustainable and the waste that we produce. So I would like to bring in another angle here. In beyond GDP, we also look at the economic model that we pursue. In the car, the business model that pursue is the theory of obsolescence. The car shouldn't last very long, so that the car companies can make as much GDP as they want. So this is where we need to get into a different angle in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Rashida and front first. You okay? Boleh. Then you decide.
Thank you so much, Cornelia.
Okay.
Fascinating. Hello? Thank you. And which go far beyond just efficiency and effectiveness in economics, but also human agency towards the implications of data centers on the planet, and which cross all the different sectors that need to be measured when we talk about going beyond GDP. So any thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Prof. Rashida.
Hello. Okay, I'll be quick. After listening from this morning, one point is that with regards to the dashboard that Prof. Azlan mentioned just now, it is not easy to have too many numbers that we're looking at, but maybe we do need a few. When I was listening just now, another thing that crossed my mind is that there is one dimension that I think we need to also consider. This is about security. I come from the field of international relations, so I take this very seriously. How do you have development if you do not have security, if you do not have peace? And I was listening to the different indexes that were being mentioned, and when Prof. Jamal mentioned GPI, your gross prosperity indicators, genuine, okay. I thought it was going to be the Global Peace Index, because I thought there were elements within Global Peace Index that can actually be very useful in working out the balance between development and security in order to go beyond GDP. So maybe this is something for us to consider as we discuss beyond GDP and its relationship to the security of the country or even the region in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 questions. Can I ask the panelists to respond to those questions? Last one was on peace index, security, circular economy. I can't remember the other. Anyway, we have 4, and then we move to the next 3 or 4. I was going to respond to Joa, because your name has been mentioned specifically. You better respond to that.
Thank you for saying my name. Well, I may not be able to recall the order of the questions, but I remember the circular economy being mentioned. Yeah, the gentleman was arguing that it is the model of the economy which is the culprit, something like that. Well, look at GDP. What does it tell us? Does it tell us anything about sustainability, about well-being? It does not, right? But yet we use it as a measure of progress. So what happens? We will find ways, all sort of ways, in order to grow GDP, including reliance on foreign direct investments. Okay, let's suppose right from the 70s, we've started to focus on indigenous technology development. So, what are we going to say right now? We won't be talking about, hey, it's very important for us to keep on welcoming FDIs. I don't say that FDIs are not important, but not to the extent of becoming dependent. You won't be able to encourage or spur indigenous technology development that way. Look at the case of Japan, right from the early 70s, in terms of their government procurement. they rely very much on local scientists, develop local technology. I know for the first few years, it will be very primitive. It will be like a dinosaur era technology. It's okay, but the government was patient because the government knew that in a few years' time, the technology will mature. And in the end, they'll have a very much full-grown indigenous-based technology. But we did not do that, right? Because it's all in the name of growing our GDP. So it's difficult to sustain if the processes are not rightly being formulated or being identified. Now, if you want to grow well-being, that will give us a strong signal, a strong measure, strong indication in terms of our growth path, whether we are on the path of sustainability or otherwise. So let's say our GPR is going down, like Singapore, GPR is going down, but GDP is okay. Let's say our GPR is going down. So that will give us a strong signal that, hey, something is not right in terms of how we manage our economy. Then the circular economy will come in, and many other models will come in. Now, the point here is about the importance of having the right measure so that we can do the right things. GPI is the right measure to reflect whether or not we are on the path of growing well-being. GDP is best for us to know if we are on the path of growing our material being. So it depends what you want, but certainly we're going to do away with GDP. We need to keep it for many good reasons. Now, the first question was about, you mentioned about, let me recall, you mentioned about trust, was it about trust or trust deficit? Again, it's the importance of having the right measure. So that we know what to do. You know, by having the right measure, we can certainly, it's obvious for us to be able to come up with the right remedies, right? Now, what is the problem with trust? Because, do you know, for example, in terms of, to come up with the GDP figures, to come up with Gini coefficients, for example. Is the process being transparent? That's why in our GPI calculation, we do away with Gini coefficient, but instead we use median household income over mean household income. And we track the progress of the ratio in order to get a more credible measure of income distribution. I think transparency is very important, not just having not just being able to come up with the figures timely, but the processes. When it is an issue to DOSM, but well, input-output tables, there are some issues there. Social accounting metrics, there are some issues there. So again, it will lead to that trust deficit if we don't remedy it quickly. So what is another question? Sorry, maybe others will pick up those questions.
Short. I'm giving the opportunity to panelists to respond to whatever questions you want to respond to. But I just want to share with you that we decided to extend this Q&A this session to 1 o'clock. But I need to give time to each panelist to prepare to wrap up, 2-3 minutes each. So before we get to that stage, can we have a few more questions back, some burning questions. So this will be the final round, and then I'm getting panelists to respond, either now or later, I'm not too sure, we'll see how it goes, and then we get Darussalam to do a wrap up. How many more have we got? One? Only one? Great, okay.
Hello, one more I get the last question. My name is Sasha, I'm from Protect and Save the Children. We are an NGO that looks into child abuse, advocacy, prevention, and helping with case management. I also have a background in government side as a pediatrician whose special interest was in child protection for many years. So in terms of what I wanted to bring up was about data gaps. So when we talk about measuring progress, measuring happiness and all, We've got information that the teens in Malaysia are the happiest compared to the adults, women and men. We've got information that in child abuse cases, which gender is most affected, who are the perpetrators, where are all the abuse happening, in which states are the highest. But I wanted to ask, in considering the National Wellbeing Framework, when we look at our children, we have issues of stunting, we have issues of abuse going up. So where in what I need as a person on the ground and dealing with the victims, I want to run prevention programs where I'm not telling you where the dangers are only, but I also want to know the outcome. That if I help you or if the government helps you, what happens to the victim in the end? How much of our framework and discussion involves the youth and looking at the outcome when we provide treatment, when we provide rehabilitation? So I would like to know, considering that we are a multicultural country and a lot of these outcome results, I do not have access to it. And these are things that I feel when I run my programs and I discuss with victims or potential victims or families, I would like to know if it's in the plan on the national level that we are going to look into helping this, because we know the adverse outcomes for all our children in the coming years.
Thank you for that last question. I'm getting the panelists to do a wrap-up. We're going to begin with Dr. Rosita. We'll go this way. So in the wrap-up, you do 2 minutes each, your final thoughts in a few sentences, and also to respond to some questions which have not been answered, including the last one on children. Okay, we'll start with Dr. Rosita, ending with Project Marcella. A couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you, Dato. Okay, from these sessions, I learned also a lot from those speakers or panels. That I do hope that go beyond GDP will work, and that it will help furthermore how to improve the study, especially that related to the socio-economic aspect and so on. And I hope that from time to time this can be implemented and can be used wisely. Okay, and then yeah, that's actually from me, right?
Very good discussion. I think a bit kind of the challenges about moving forward. I think first and foremost is that to get not only the government but the wider society, everyone, even the corporate, the public at large, to really understand the fact that a nation is moving forward when not just GDP is good, but the rest of other components. But we need to find a way to identify, what are probably the major components. Everything under the sky is important. I want to protect everything under the sky. But we have champions. Tiger champion, kids champion, elderly champion, all kind of champion, no problem about that. Everyone has to come forward and do their best in the areas that they are of interest and have expertise. But still, I think at the end of it, Malaysia needs some way of telling and communicating to public the easiest way that yes, we are progressing, beyond GDP. I fully spotted on that, but we need to come to some form of consensus to agree, and everything to be there might not be easy. But again, the word happiness ni saya risau sikit lah, because kalau I tengok the latest report of happiness, according to their metrics, anything between above 6 is happy, 6 to 8 is happy, above 8 is very happy. So far, in all the indicators that they counted, I couldn't find anything 8 and above. I think they are also afraid to say that you are 8 and above, because you say very happy, then everybody will shout. So 6, most are at 7, nothing less than 6, meaning that, well, we are all happy. 6 to 8, most are 7. We are not happy, right? Beyond GDP is not done yet. Thank you.
Tunku Sushan, that we are all supposed to be the happiest nation in the world. Okay, I guess maybe let me touch on a couple of questions that were raised earlier as my closing. First is on, I think Cornelia, right? You asked about, if I'm not mistaken, this, I think, emerging, maybe not emerging anymore, actually, right in our faces now, phenomena of artificial intelligence, data centers. All these things have come to us over the last couple of years, because when we started this discussion as CSOs, that technology challenge wasn't quite surfaced, I don't think. It was in the periphery, but we never really went into it in that much detail because it wasn't really such a concern as it's now becoming today. Jobs really are at stake, right? And it's not just a particular sector, but jobs all across. So we've never, I think, encountered in history a time where a transformation involved risking all human jobs. And Bill Gates has actually said that, yes, we may not need humans for jobs anymore. And the other thing is also in terms of resources. I mean, these data centers are huge suckers of energy, I mean, water and so on. So how do we balance all these things, I think is your question, and I thank you for raising it, because these are the kind of perspectives that we also need, while, you know, that are coming out, and we need all these things to surface as well as we, you know, try and see what needs to go into this ingredient called, into that framework of beyond GDP. The other thing is on, Dr. Sasha, you asked a very important question about outcome, right? What is the outcome? And are we measuring outcomes? So I think so far, generally, what we do is, especially when we do budget reporting, we talk about how much we spend on a particular issue, right? A percentage of GDP spent on health, on children's welfare, whatever. But we don't actually then convey what is the actual outcome. So I think that is also the other thing that we need to look at when we build this beyond GDP framework. We're more focused on the outcome, not, you know, how much we are putting into it, because that is not really the measure of success. It's, I mean, my very short answer. But ultimately, I think this kind of discussions, I think we need to continue, because we are really actually building on this momentum now, I feel. You know, today's discussion has been so rich. And we look forward to continuing it with, you know, as many of you as would like to join this journey, and we also, you know, and experts as well who can definitely give the, you know, technical weight to what we're talking about.
Okay, I was doing also referencing the recent questions, you know, AI, circular economy, trust, and I think these. Well, all of us are very problematic to answer, right? I mean, once upon a time as a British civil servant, they used to tell us that everything is measurable. And I don't quite believe that, but that was the mantra of the government at the time. But I think what these questions and the difficulty we have in answering them, I think we're all trying to avoid some of these questions, shows how important they are to people's welfare and how they are important to developmental progress, right, in a country like Malaysia. And when you come to GDP, you see the clear inadequacies. You know, these kind of issues are specifically often not there in the GDP metric. But that doesn't mean that the endeavour to find something beyond GDP while retaining GDP is pointless. It must be better than what we have now. So I think there's still value, you know, in what we're trying to do here. And you know, it will be a slow progress, a difficult progress, but we must produce something better than what we have now, in terms of also including these welfare environmental dimensions, you know, how policies are made. And my very final point on linking to the international, you know, I think Malaysia, you know, can be influenced by this international debate. And, you know, when the high-level panel eventually reports, it will mandate the reporting of a dashboard or alternative GDP measures. But also, Malaysia is in a position to influence as well. So again, I advocate, you know, that people need to, you know, Malaysia needs to make its voice heard in these fora, to get the issues it is concerned about inside these global metrics as well. Okay, thank you.
First of all, I have to note that I've learned a lot today from every one of them. I just think that in the time that I have, I'll address a point in relation to opportunity cost. Of course, you know, you have the nominal measure of it, and then of course that doesn't have perceptions into it. But of course, with this range of variables that we're going to compute in the dashboard, you can of course then adjust that accordingly. Not anyone can do everything all the time. You can only do certain things at a certain time. Opportunity cost actually comes from there. Of course, the concept itself asks you to do things where you achieve Pareto optimality, that's the best return that you can get at that particular composition of things. But coming back here, I remember the capacity of especially mainstream economics to adjust. I'm not sure if you all are aware, Paul Romer was one of the recipients of the Nobel Prize in 2018 with William Nordhaus. He designed a model which was used by this guy who wrote on the East Asian growth rates, contrarian view and tyranny of numbers. Now he made that point and predicted that Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore and Hong Kong would collapse because they're all growing by factor inputs. They did not see total factor productivity growing fast enough. Now where are we now compared to what he has projected? And that same model was used by Paul Romer, adjusting for endogenizing technology in both capital and human resource. So in the end, he gets a Nobel Prize for something his very predictions doesn't actually. In fact, I didn't advise the Vietnamese government on the industrial policy. The IMF did not want to publish it as such, already recorded that it's no longer useful in estimating technical change. Now the reason I raised that, a lot of our qualitative variables here are perceptions. Like scale scores, the most you have when you want to introduce them alongside quantitative variables. People can change their scores if you move a certain time. For example, are you happy and suddenly you lost this job say? Or suddenly something happens. So all those perceptions are not really calculated. My advice is there must be more rigor in the way these estimations are made. Thank you.
Every time early in the semester, very early in my first lecture, especially to my undergraduate students in microeconomics, I would advise them, I would enlighten them on the very objective of the study of economics. I always remind them, economics is about the study on how to maximize well-being, how to maximize societal welfare. We as economists must strive to establish economic justice, maximizing societal well-being. No other discipline is more noble than the study of economics, except theology maybe. They wanted to maximize utility in this life and the afterlife. But economics don't talk about afterlife. But note the keyword, maximizing well-being. What is the measure of well-being? So far we have used GDP as a proxy for well-being. And remember, we don't do the right things until you have the right measure. So now we are talking about measuring well-being. I'm very much elated. It is something deep residing in my heart for so many years. Now, when you talk about beyond GDP, remember, the key word here is GDP, and GDP is such a nice thing, it's a gift by economists to mankind. You can see, very clearly what GDP is, because it is being expressed in dollars and cents, so that you can see the scale of importance of the various attributes in GDP, right? So when we talk about beyond GDP, it means that we need to have a measure like GDP, but capturing simultaneously social dimension and environmental dimension. And GPI is just one of it. We have the green GDP indicator, of course it has its own pros and cons. We have the genuine savings, the World Bank indicator, of course with pros and cons. We have the inclusive wealth indicator, again, it has its own strengths and weaknesses. And GPI I've explained very briefly. So we need to move forward, identify which one is best for us, and of course, nothing is easy. Remember GDP, when it was first incepted in the 40s, it wasn't easy until came the guidelines, the standards, the SNA, which is being adopted by all countries around the world. Then it became easy. But it wasn't easy, actually, to implement GDP from the beginning. The same with beyond GDP. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We've spent a very productive morning, very insightful commentaries, and our panelists have been outstanding. Overall, I think we've spent a great day here. I hope you have enjoyed yourselves. this gentleman here, and of course those participants as well. You spend a lot of time. Yeah, I mean, time is money. Yeah? So one more morning, spending your time in Malaya. So in ROI, I hope you have a good ROI. Benefits. I hope you have benefited from this engagement session. Going forward, there are two more. Yeah? One is final words from Tan Sri Sulaiman, and we have a 5-10 minute break, and we're going to go there. Those of you who are interested to contribute on the way forward, where we go from here. Yeah? Can I have a show of hands? Who would like to join us in this session? Great, so you have about 20. Thank you so much. Anyway, in summary, GDP has done wonders. A lot of great things. Yeah, GDP has guided governments for decades. Standardized the measurement of wealth, mainly not welfare, of course. So GDP is good, but it's not enough. It's been criticized quite heavily. So now we're moving beyond GDP. So what is that? What is beyond GDP? There will be welfare, children, orang asli, the marginalized, many other things. So it is complete. So it's not just, you need good data, good numbers, you get good policies, not just numbers, before you have good people as well. Yeah? Governance, integrity, those things are equally important. So Malaysia has played a very important role in many of these discussions. Dato Uzir just came back from New York. Yeah? So this is work in progress. So Malaysia is going to play a very active role in shaping the future beyond GDP. So that's why we're here this morning. We're gathering insights, inputs from you, so that we can have a national consensus, right? Yeah? So we're going to discuss a framework for Malaysia, and for that, there's got to be partnerships between universities, think tanks, CSO, government, private sector, everyone. We need to be on board so that we have something that's really useful, something that's beneficial for Malaysia. We're here for a better Malaysia, all of us. Yeah? This is a great country. We love this country. We want a better Malaysia. So how can that happen? Many ways, of course. One is to have good indicators, good paper, good implementation. Make sure that you have trust. I have the same view about exam results.